Chapter 188. The red tank is the strongest of the five. Not to mention the power given by the evil god Setarak, his extraordinary size is enough to prove this point. Height 287 centimeters, weight 862 kilograms. This is the data recorded in the information provided by Ross. Coupled with an almost indestructible body and inexhaustible strength, the red tank could definitely wrestle with Hulk. The reason why Ross recruited the red tank into the Thunder Agents is probably because of this. The red tank against Hulk, the Ghost against Iron Man, Luke Cage against Rogers, Crying Bird and Moonstone against Black Widow and Hawkeye. Logue, on the other hand, was up against Thor. The red tank with a huge semicircular helmet doesn't know what Rogue is thinking. But since Rogue took the initiative to propose, he certainly won't refuse. Dong 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 dong. The gigantic red tank began to move, running towards Logue step by step. At first, his speed wasn't very fast. But after running for a while, his speed became faster and faster, and the potential energy accumulated in his body became more and more. Although the red tank has the power given by the evil god Setarak, his attack method is simple to the point of being extremely violent. Collision. Destroy everything in front of him with an irresistible collision. The collision is unparalleled, the collision is irresistible, the collision is destructive. Looking at the red tank running toward him like an ancient beast, Rogue didn't stay idle and directly used ninjutsu. Would release, would human jutsu. When the red tank was only 10 meters away from Rogue, a wooden Arhat twice the height of the red tank jumped out of the ground and directly rushed toward the red tank. Arhat's attack is not weak, but the weight of Arhat can't be said to be not heavy. Even so, when the wooden Arhat rushed in front of the red tank, the larger wooden Arhat was directly knocked out. Boom! The wooden Arhat, which was 6 to 7 meters tall, was sent flying like a baseball. It smashed through the wall of the training room and flew to the square outside the training room, creating a large crater in the ground of the square. This kind of impact was pretty good. Rogue sighed in his heart. The distance of 10 meters was closed in an instant. When Red Tank arrived in front of Rogue like a train at full speed, a huge fist about the size of Red Tank's body struck out from the ground. Boom! This huge fist hit the Red Tank without any suspense, sending the Red Tank flying into the air like a hot knife through butter. Just as Red Tank was sent flying by the fist from the ground, Wooden Arhat, who was sent flying by him, once again appeared in front of him. Wooden Arhat clenched his fists and used all the strength in his body to fiercely hit the Red Tank's head. Boom! The moment Wooden Arhat hit, Red Tank in the air flew to the ground like a falling meteor, creating a large crater with a diameter of nearly 1 meter on the ground. The huge wooden fist from the ground and Wooden Arhat completed a tacit joint attack. The initiative of the battle returned to Rogue's hands. After Wooden Arhat landed, he didn't immediately chase after Red Tank lying in the crater. Instead, he ran to the front of the huge wooden fist and pressed his hands directly on the fingers of the wooden fist. Under Rogue's control, Wooden Arhat began to merge with the wooden fist, and Wooden Arhat's body shape changed again. In just a second or two, the huge wooden fist disappeared. In its place, there was a Wooden Arhat, who was nearly 8 meters tall and had arms that were a bit too thick. Rogue didn't summon a second wooden man. The fist underground was just a fist. With the idea of wasting a shameful thing, he let Wooden Arhat and the wooden fist merge together to form a new Wooden Arhat. Wooden Arhat completed the upgrade, and Red Tank also took the opportunity to climb out of the crater. Although Wooden Arhat and the wooden fist's attacks were powerful, they didn't cause much damage to Red Tank. Except for a little pain when he was hit. Standing up again, the Red Tank saw the Wooden Arhat that had grown taller, and also saw the Wooden Arhat's arms that had obviously been strengthened. Looking up at Wooden Arhat, who was 2 or 3 times his size, Red Tank still didn't plan to change tactics. In other words, the concept of tactics didn't exist in his mind. Whether it was Wooden Arhat or Rogue, Red Tank only had one way to deal with it. And that was to charge. Red Tank began to run for the second time, but this time, Rogue didn't give him too much time. Red Tank had just run a few steps when Wooden Arhat's fist arrived in front of him. Boom! Wooden Arhat's right fist directly interrupted Red Tank's run. Boom! Wooden Arhat's left fist followed by his right fist and hit Red Tank's body, knocking him down again. Boom! 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 Punch back, punch back, punch back, punch back. Wooden Arhat turned into a ruthless punching machine, punching Red Tank again and again. The ruler of the Crimson Universe, Ceterak, was indeed very strong, but Red Tank wasn't Ceterak himself. Even if Red Tank had endless power, he still needed to have a chance to use it. Punch after punch. Each punch was faster than the last. Each punch was heavier than the last. Rog didn't care about Chakra's consumption, and let Wooden Arhat attack like crazy. You don't listen to orders, you have a personality, you're a maverick. I don't believe I can't beat you guys. If 1 time isn't enough, then 2 times. If 2 times isn't enough, then 3 times. Since you've already sold yourself out, then don't even think about keeping your chastity. If Red Tank and Luke Cage really would rather die than submit, then they wouldn't have joined the Thunderbolt Special Agent team. Since they chose to join, it meant that they still had some scruples. Rog didn't know what they were scruples about, or perhaps they wanted to use this opportunity to gain something. But since they've already made their choice, then don't King play the game of personality. If they really had such a personality, then they shouldn't have chosen to join in the first place. Wooden Arhat's fists constantly hit Red Tank, and the huge attack power made the ground of the entire training ground tremble. Boom! 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 The dull sound of the blows was like a war drum, and at the same time, Luke Cage and the others understood that Rog wasn't joking with them. The violent and continuous sound also woke Crying Bird and Moonlight Stone up, and then they saw the scene of Wooden Arhat violently beating Red Tank. They had just woken up and were still afraid of the illusion they had just experienced, but now, they felt that the illusion they had experienced was relatively gentle. If Wooden Arhat was attacking them now, they couldn't imagine the tragic scene. Chapter 189. 3 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour. Arhat was like a perpetual motion machine, constantly waving his fists, constantly letting Red Tank understand what physical influence was. The originally clean and tidy training room had now become like a large construction site. Moreover, it was the kind of construction site where the dust index was seriously over the limit. Spiderweb-like cracks covered the entire training room, and cracks appeared on the surrounding walls due to the continuous shaking. Especially the wall that Luke Cage and Arhat had smashed through, it showed signs of collapsing. Luke Cage and the others had already left the training room more than half an hour ago. They couldn't bear to see Red Tank being crazily trained by Arhat. The emotions of a fox mourning the death of a rabbit spread in everyone's heart. As the initiator of all this, Rog of course didn't stay in the dust-filled training room. To be precise, he was the first to leave the training room. Sunshade, foldable recliners, frozen happy drinks. Rog wore sunglasses as he leisurely reclined on the chair, enjoying this rare afternoon. If there were 2 bikini beauties next to him, this afternoon would be even more perfect. Thinking up to this point, Roger lifted his sunglasses slightly and scanned the Crying Bird and Moonlight Stone back and forth a few times with a malicious gaze. Singing Bird Melissa and Moonlight Stone immediately noticed Rog's gaze. The 2 involuntarily took a few steps back, and then hid behind Luke Cage. Sigh. What a pity. The Wooden Arhat's training continued, and time passed by little by little. When the sun set and they enjoyed a barbecue that was full of military style, the training room that was constantly emitting sounds finally quieted down. That's enough. If he really killed Red Tank, Ross would more or less have some opinions. After noticing that Red Tank's life force showed signs of weakening, Rog finally ended Red Tank's first training process. After waiting for about half an hour, Red Tank, who was only left with a pair of tattered pants, walked out and silently came in front of Rog. Captain. Although Red Tank's appearance made him look like he wasn't very intelligent, it didn't mean that Red Tank was an idiot who didn't think of anything. After understanding the huge gap between himself and Rog, the Red Tank decisively chose to obey. Yes. Rog didn't pay much attention to Red Tank's expression as he casually replied. Although it took a little longer than expected, the result was still very satisfactory. Following that, Moonlight Stone and the others led Rog to the resting area in the base. Ask Ross to arrange for someone to redesign your image. You are going to become superheroes in the hearts of the people. Your current appearances are not positive enough. After leaving this sentence, Rog took out a Thor kunai and threw it directly at the dart target more than 10 meters away. Bullseye. Don't touch kunai. As soon as he finished speaking, Rog left with the Flying Thunder God and returned home to New York. In the afternoon, Ross transferred $500 million for the first year to Rog's account. The selection list of equipment and some authorization accounts were also sent to Konoha. As for the research teams and professional equipment, Ross directly gave him a list of research institutes and laboratories. As long as he needs it, he can arrange for Dr. Connors to go to these places to conduct relevant research experiments at any time. At around 11 o'clock, Gavin, who had performed a righteous patrol outside, also returned here. Rog briefly told Gavin about the deal between himself and Ross, and then it was a dry and raging night. 3 days later, the first press conference of the Thunder Secret Service team officially began. Ross did not arrange the site of the press conference in the previous base, but in Arlington County, where the Pentagon is located. Although Rog came to the press conference with Luke Cage and others, he did not appear directly at the press conference. According to Ross, he needs a way to make an appearance that is eye-catching enough. In fact, it's just a way to make an appearance that is more in line with the appearance of a superhero. Ross first made a very ambitious opening statement, then talked about the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. Then, the topic changed and entered the theme of the press conference. Today, on behalf of the U.S. government and the Pentagon, I will officially introduce to you a new team of heroes that can be compared to the Avengers. They are the Thunder Secret Service team. After Ross finished speaking in a high-spirited tone, there was a burst of salute at the press conference. With the sound of the salute, Luke Cage and others came to the podium one by one and waved to the reporters below. After Luke Cage and others appeared one by one, Ross began to introduce the members of the Thunder Secret Service team to everyone. In order to make the Thunder Avengers look more decent, Ross followed Rog's advice and designed a new image for them. When introducing Luke Cage and others, Ross did not hide the fact that they were once criminals. And in a country like the United States, it doesn't make sense to hide this. It's just that he beautified the special recruitment into a beautiful change for Luke Cage and others, a rebirth under the influence of the liberal democratic spirit of the United States. It has to be said that since he changed his career to become a politician, Ross has mastered these elements that can ignite the emotions of the people. Former criminals have changed their ways and decided to use their own strength to protect the people. What better way to show the noble sentiments of Luke Cage and others? Sure enough, under Ross's provocative words, the reporters present did not dwell on the fact that Luke Cage and others were once criminals. In order to lead such a team of heroes, we specially invited a superhero that everyone is familiar with to be the captain of the Thunder Secret Service team. Under his leadership, we believe that the Thunder Secret Service team can make a great contribution to world peace, just like the Avengers. He is the Masked Man. Ross suddenly raised his right hand and pointed to the sky, pointing to Rog who was standing on the round fan. Rog had been staying hundreds of meters in the air at the press conference, watching Ross's slightly exaggerated performance. Although he didn't like Ross's way of expression, as a ninja with good professional ethics, he knew very well what it meant to take someone's money to solve a problem. I'll play along with you. Rog jumped lightly and directly left the round fan and flew toward the podium like a meteor. Just as he was about to have a close contact with the ground, he flashed to the podium through the flying Thor kunai on the moonstone. Chapter 190. Although it was not the kind of superhero landing that Ross had imagined, Rog's approach was perfectly in line with his identity. At this time, Rog was still wearing his iconic three-tomo mask. And he was wearing a white haori. The Akatsuki's robe was not suitable for such an occasion, and wearing the Akatsuki's robe made him look more like a supervillain than a superhero. When he flashed to the podium, the reporters at the scene couldn't help but exclaim. Some thought he would fall directly to the ground, while others were surprised by his appearance. "Good afternoon, everyone." After a simple greeting, Rog controlled the thunder fan in the air to fly in front of him, and then grabbed the fan. The three-hooked jade mask and the round fan that could fly were enough to prove the identity of his true self. Masked man. "Sir, do you really want to join the Thunder Secret Service team?" As soon as Rog caught the flying fan, a blonde female reporter in a light gray professional suit stood up and asked the first question. When asking the question, the delicate female reporter hesitated for a few seconds because she didn't know if it was appropriate to call Rog the masked man. But she didn't have a better choice. Because Rog had never revealed his true identity in front of the public, even the title of the masked man was given by the public casually. "Before answering your question, I'll make a simple self-introduction," Rog said calmly. "No way. He's going to announce his identity?" For a while, the reporters present were excited. Although the New York incident had been a long time ago, people's curiosity about who the masked man was had not diminished at all. This could be seen from the website, Who is the Masked Man, set up by Sky. "My name is Rog, and I'm a ninja." After that, Rog took off the three-tomo mask and revealed his true face. Wearing a mask can indeed hide one's identity, but at this time, Rog felt that he didn't have much need to hide his identity. At worst, there would be a group of paparazzi around in the future. When he took off his mask, people realized that Rog was younger and more handsome than they had imagined. As for the fact that he always wore a mask, many people thought that he chose to wear a mask because of his appearance. Many people even thought that it was because of his disfigurement that he didn't dare to show his true face. But at this moment, these reporters finally understood how unreliable those rumors were. Other than his eyes being different from normal people, Rog's appearance perfectly met the standard of a handsome young man. With her looks, it would be a pity if she didn't act in a movie. It would be best if it was a restricted film. Several classic scripts flashed through the mind of the female reporter who asked the question, and the way she looked at Rog became a little strange. "Ninja? Mr. Rog, are you referring to those ninjas in Japan?" Although a lot of images that were not suitable for children had already appeared in her mind, the good professionalism of the female reporter still kept her calm and continued to ask questions. "Although the names are the same, they are not the same profession. I am the kind of ninja who can release ninjutsu, for example, this one." As soon as his voice fell, Rog raised his right hand, and then released a real thunderbolt into the sky. Rumble. A huge thunder suddenly sounded. "Mr. Rog, are you an earthling, or an alien like Thor, or a mutant like Hulk?" The blonde female reporter continued to ask. "I'm an earthling, a pure earthling, and I'm not a mutant like Hulk. Let's put it this way, ninjutsu is a power that can be learned. I learned these ninjutsu in a place called Konoha Hidden Village. Anyway, no one knows what ninjutsu is, and no one can prove this," so Rog said without changing his expression. "A man who can't lie is not a good man. Especially a man who can't lie in front of a woman." "Konoha Hidden Village? Where is that place?" The female reporter asked a question that everyone was very concerned about. Even Ross was seriously waiting for his answer. "It's a place isolated from the world, they don't like to be disturbed, and they don't like to leave the village, so I won't tell you the location of the village. Konoha Hidden Village is a ghost. If there is such a place, he won't say such an important thing." After hearing Rog's answer, many people sighed in disappointment. Although they don't know the specific location of Konoha Hidden Village, many people have the idea of starting to investigate Konoha Hidden Village after going back. Including Ross. "Then why did you leave the village?" It was the same female reporter. "Good question, I said so much just to wait for you to ask this question. This is a bit complicated. In Konoha Hidden Village, the most powerful ninja is called the Hokage. The Hokage is the only person who can choose whether to leave the village or not. And I am the current Hokage of Konoha Hidden Village, the fourth Hokage." After that, Rog directly turned around, revealing the red characters on his haori. Fourth Hokage. Rog didn't intend to continue with the title of the masked man. Instead of worrying about whether he will get some strange title after announcing his identity, it's better to take the initiative to choose one. When he was choosing his title, he hesitated for a moment, wondering which one he should choose. God of Shinobi, Golden Flash, Konoha's White Fang, Sannin, First Hokage, Fourth Hokage. After thinking about it, he finally chose the Fourth Hokage as his future hero title. Not for anything else, but because the Haori of the Fourth Hokage is more handsome. And Minato's appearance is a little bit closer to him. Although it's not as good as him, it's not bad. So only the title of the Fourth Hokage is worthy of his temperament and appearance. In the next 10 minutes, the reporters asked some questions about Rog and the Thunderbolt agents. Of course, the main questions were about Rog. Although it didn't take long, the content of this press conference was enough to cause a sensation. The news of Rog's new title, the Fourth Hokage, and the Thunderbolt agents also spread out at an amazing speed. As soon as the press conference ended, Rog's personal mobile phone rang crazily. Tawny, Captain America, Natasha, and Banner all called for the first time. Rog didn't want to answer the calls from Captain America and Natasha for the time being. So he called Tawny back first. Fourth Hokage, I have to say, this title is much better than the previous masked man. Tawny didn't care about Rog joining the Thunderbolt agents at all, and he didn't believe that Rog would go with Ross. Deal, everything is a deal. Tawny saw the key point in it at a glance. Chapter 191. Of course, this is the title I chose myself. If the title of Fourth Hokage is not as good as the masked man, then Rog would eat the Haori now. I'm a little curious, what kind of conditions did Ross give you that you are willing to cooperate with him to disclose your identity? Tawny and Rog have known each other for a long time, and the current Rog made Tawny feel like he was seeing himself in the past. Of course, this does not refer to the ability to invent, but to the style of life. It was my own decision to disclose my identity, and he only bought me to join in name. There is nothing to hide about this, and as the Thunder Task Force officially begins to act, Tawny will be able to guess this sooner or later. What's the price? Tawny continued to ask. $500 million a year, plus equipment of the same value, and some additional rights. That's all, it's not a lot. Rog directly said Ross's price. That's $1 billion a year, your endorsement fee is high enough. Even the billionaire Tawny was a little shocked after hearing this price. Even for him, $1 billion a year is not a trivial matter. This is barely a medium amount. The military is still very rich, you should know this best. Stark Industries originally made its fortune as a military enterprise. It can even be said that the Pentagon contributed a lot to Tawny's current net worth. And compared with Stark Industries, Rog feels that his endorsement fee is more reasonable. That's also true, they can't fight, but they have a lot of money. Tawny also took advantage of this opportunity. By the way, let me remind you, be careful of Ross, he is not a good person, don't be sold by him without knowing. At the end of the phone call, Tawny specifically reminded Rog, which is also a kind concern from a friend. I will pay attention, and if he wants to sell me, it depends on whether he has the ability to do so. After ending the call with Tawny, Rog also called Dr. Banner back. What Banner wanted to say was similar to Tawny's. Basically, the new title was not bad, and they must be careful of Ross. After calling Tawny and Banner back, Rog put away his phone. Although there were several missed calls from Rogers and Black Widow Natasha, he had no intention of calling them back. As long as S.H.I.E.L.D. is still there, they are destined to be competitors. Unless S.H.I.E.L.D. falls, or the two of them withdraw from S.H.I.E.L.D., Rog has no plans to contact his opponents. The commotion caused by the press conference was far beyond Ross's expectations. It also made him feel that inviting Rog to join them was a wise decision. Although it was only in name, the people wouldn't care if you joined in name or not. At the cost of $1 billion a year, Roger was tied to the Thunder Agent's war chariot. No matter how one looked at it, it was a very good deal. Rog was satisfied, Ross was satisfied, and the people were satisfied. Except for Hydra, everyone else was quite satisfied after hearing the news. That night, several senior executives of Hydra held an overnight meeting at a secret base. Rog didn't care too much about Hydra's reaction. When his identity was officially made public, it was more difficult for Hydra to do anything to him. At least that's what it looks like on the surface. Not long after the press conference, Rog returned to New York with the Flying Thunder God. He was not in the mood to live with Luke Cage and others in a base transformed from a military camp. No matter how comfortable it is outside, it's not as comfortable as home, especially when there is a beautiful girlfriend at home. Not long after Rog got up, he saw the headlines about him. He had to sigh at the amazing efficiency of the American media. Less than 24 hours after his identity was made public, all the things he did before that were not particularly secret were dug up by the media. His identity as a private detective suddenly appeared in New York 3 years ago, and even the fact that he was almost taken away by the police was dug up by these media. Of course, he established Konoha's private military company. For this reason, Erica also specifically contacted him and asked him how to deal with the dozens of reporters at the door of the company. "I'll let the shadow clone take you away. Don't go back to the company for the time being. Especially Frank and the other two, let them pay attention to hiding their whereabouts. I don't want the news of monsters in captivity to appear." After the call, Rog arranged for a shadow clone to return to the company. These media are just a little crazy now, and it will be fine in a few days. And in a place like New York, there is never a shortage of big news. No one knows New York better than me. A ninja who has lived in New York for several years said with great certainty. After dealing with the team's affairs, Flying Thunder God came to the Thunder Agents headquarters base in Washington. It was still the same. This headquarters base was originally a military base, but it had been renovated. In the conference room of Thunder headquarters. The Thunderbolt's Secret Service has already spread the word, but you still lack actual results. Therefore, we chose 3 missions as the first operation of the Thunder Secret Service team. After that, Ross arranged for the male assistant next to him to turn on the screen in the conference room and began to introduce the mission brief. Terrorists in Ukraine bought a nuclear warhead on the black market in Russia. A UA cargo ship was hijacked by pirates in the waters of Somalia and the UA government was asked to pay $50 million. A U.S. military overseas base in Afghanistan was attacked by terrorists and 5 U.S. soldiers were kidnapped. After reading these 3 mission briefings, the first thing that came to Rog's mind was not the details of the mission, but the UA government was really hateful. Is this the international charm of the world's most powerful country? I love it. Except for the mission in Afghanistan, the other 2 missions were originally the CIB's missions, but S.H.I.E.L.D. intervened. But we took it from S.H.I.E.L.D. again, so these 3 missions now belong to us. The missions are not very difficult. 2 people go to each place. There is not enough manpower, so Rog, you have to go on a mission. As soon as Ross finished speaking, Rog threw an unused commission scroll to him. That depends on whether you have the luck. I want the mission in Ukraine, and the reward is no less than $30 million. Before the press conference, Rog and Ross reached some additional agreements. As the captain of the Thunder Agents, Rog certainly can't stay idle. So in order to solve this problem, Rog proposed his favorite and best commission mode. As long as Ross' commission can be judged by the system, he will perform the mission in the name of the Thunder Agents. Of course, if Ross is unlucky and the commission does not pass the system's judgment, then he can only blame his bad luck. Chapter 192. Robbing a helicarrier. This behavior is very exciting. Especially when doing this kind of thing under the eyes of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra, the difficulty and excitement of the robbery has greatly increased. If Hydra hadn't suddenly kidnapped Sky and Jessica, Russell wouldn't have had the idea of robbing the helicarrier. The helicarrier is not a small fighter like the Quinjet, but a complete air fortress. Robbing this thing in front of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra should be as difficult as directly attacking the secret city of Wakanda. More importantly, even if a behemoth like the helicarrier is successfully robbed, it will not be easy to hide it. Although there should also be environmental reflective panels and anti-radar search devices on it, the helicarrier is still a bit too big. And as the manufacturer of the helicarrier, S.H.I.E.L.D. can definitely find the hidden helicarrier. Although robbing the helicarrier is difficult, it has to be said that the helicarrier is still very attractive to Russell. In Hydra's plan, 3 helicarriers are enough to dominate the world. Although Russell doesn't have as much confidence in the helicarrier as Hydra, he doesn't deny the helicarrier's powerful combat ability. In the distance, Triple Wing is still brightly lit and people are coming and going. Russell and the Hungry Wolf Warrior are also making their final preparations. In fact, there is nothing to prepare. They just need to distribute the super hacking program in their hands and let the 2 Hungry Wolf teams wait for the opportunity to board the helicarrier. As for whether they can succeed or not, it is really up to fate. Although Russell is quite confident in the Hungry Wolf Warrior, he is not arrogant enough to think that the Hungry Wolf Warrior can look down on all of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra's warriors. S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra are really serious and they are also very scary. Time passed little by little, and when the first light appeared on the horizon, Russell and the Hungry Wolf Warrior quietly left the roof where they had stayed for most of the night and began to head to the Triple Wing headquarters. The information provided by Jasper was that the Insight plan would be implemented in 24 hours. According to the time calculation, Russell and the others now have at least 5 or 6 hours of rest. But Russell didn't have much hope for S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra's concept of time, especially when he carefully observed the Insight hangar below the Triple Wing headquarters with Supervision's telescopic vision and clairvoyance. He decided to launch an action in advance. The 3 helicarriers in the hangar had already made their final preparations before liftoff. Russell even saw the Mothra Cur Nick Fury and the Black Widow Natasha in the hangar. Their expressions didn't look normal. Nick Fury frowned deeply, and Black Widow Natasha, who was standing beside him, also had a distressed expression. Not only that, but there were also obvious bruises on Black Widow Natasha's delicate face. Russell clearly remembered that Natasha's face didn't have any scars apart from her beauty yesterday. The Black Widow Natasha was injured, and there didn't seem to be anything special. After all, she was a special agent. It was normal for her to get injured during a mission. But the problem, she was injured Wolf Warrior. Combined with Dr. Zola's request, Russell made a rough judgment. Because of the death of Pearson Rum, Hydra hidden in S.H.I.E.L.D. was partially exposed, but not completely exposed, which is why Project Insight was not completely terminated. Nick Fury estimated that the exposed Hydra was handed over to Black Widow Natasha and Captain America Steve Rogers to deal with, so Natasha was injured at this time. As for why Dr. Zola only asked him to kill Nick Fury and Captain America, it should be because he felt that Captain America and Captain America had a greater impact on the plan, so he made such a request. Of course, only Dr. Zola himself would know if that was what he thought. On the way to the Triple Wing headquarters, Russell carefully observed the Insight hangar, but he never found any trace of Captain America and Agent Hill. Russell can understand that Captain America is not here. After all, Captain America is a combatant. But Agent Hill is also not here, which makes him a little suspicious. Agent Hill is Nick Fury's right-hand man. At this critical moment, it's not right for her not to be here. Although he didn't find Captain America and Agent Hill, Russell saw someone here that he didn't expect at all. Dr. Bruce Banner. Why is he here? He's not from S.H.I.E.L.D., what is he doing here? Several doubts suddenly emerged in Russell's mind. Although Dr. Banner has not turned into the Grumpy Hulk now, he still felt his scalp tingle when he saw him in a suit and glasses. Compared to Hulk, he would rather see the fully armed Captain America and Falcon now. Captain America and Falcon are still normal human beings anyway. But the Hulk was different. He was completely inhuman. He is not even a human being, he is a pure extraordinary creature, an extraordinary creature that has evolved to a certain limit. Captain America and Falcon didn't come, but Hulk came. Luo Su suddenly felt that he had used up all his luck in yesterday's lottery draw. Like Russell, when Dr. Bruce Banner came to the hangar and saw the 3 extremely oppressive helicarriers, a look of shock appeared on his face. Not only that, Russell also saw an obvious puzzled expression on his face. It seems that Dr. Banner is also here for the first time, otherwise, he wouldn't look like this now. When Dr. Banner came to Nick and Natasha, they began to talk fiercely. Although Russell doesn't have super hearing, he can't read lips. But as long as he looked at Dr. Banner's reluctant expression and Natasha's somewhat ambiguous eyes, he could infer the general situation. If Russell guessed correctly, Dr. Banner was fooled here by Black Widow Natasha. Although Dr. Banner is also a member of the Avengers, he is different from Captain America and Natasha. He is a relatively neutral party. He will take on the responsibility of protecting the world, but he will not become a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. Compared to the identity of a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, he prefers his identity as a doctor. At this time, although Dr. Banner looked reluctant, but under the persuasion of Black Widow Natasha, he finally stayed in the hangar and stood silently beside Natasha. Seeing this scene, Russell couldn't help but sigh. This robbery plan is really getting more and more exciting. Chapter 193. This kind of mission, which requires disguise and intelligence gathering, is actually more suitable for CIB and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. But in order to give Thunder agents more opportunities to perform, Ross will not care about this kind of thing. For Ross and the military bigwigs behind him, as long as this mission is completed by Thunder agents, then they have sufficient reason to further apply to the White House and take back the rights that originally belonged to them little by little. It is not impossible to go further. After all, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s example is in front of them. Although Rog and Kara were disguised to a certain extent, the taxi driver still looked at them from time to time when they took a taxi to the hotel where Captain Jack was staying. This is not because the image of the two of them is too outstanding, but because the two of them are a little too unfamiliar now. The taxi driver can see at a glance that they are not locals, but if the two of them are tourists, they are completely different from tourists. As a veteran taxi driver in Kiev for more than 10 or 20 years, the man, who is over 40 years old, immediately thought of something. "Are you Interpol?" The driver asked in broken English, with a look on his face that said he had understood everything. "No, we are terrorists." Rog didn't want to answer the driver's question, but after noticing the driver's uncontrollable excitement, he opened his mouth and gave an unexpected answer. Sure enough, after hearing Rog's answer, the driver's face suddenly turned black. "You are really joking, ha ha ha," the driver laughed to hide his nervousness at this time. "You think I'm joking?" Rog said in a gloomy tone with a straight face. The driver began to panic, and he began to regret why he spoke. If it were anyone else, the taxi driver would think that the other party was joking at most. However, when Rog purposely released his aura, the driver, who was a commoner, could not help but feel instinctive fear. "Forget that we have been here. If you can't do it, I will help you do it, understand, Viktokovsky?" "Understood, sir, I will forget." The driver named Viktokovsky answered immediately, then tensed his body and looked straight ahead. For the next 10 minutes or so, nothing was said. After sending Rog and Kara to the entrance of the hotel, Viktokovsky stepped on the accelerator and quickly disappeared from Rog's sight without even paying. "Why are you scaring him? He's just an ordinary driver." "Scaring him is meaningless," Kara asked in confusion. "There's no special reason. It's just to give him some extra memories. When he's old, he might sit on the sofa and brag to his grandchildren about what happened today. Back then, Grandpa met 2 terrorists in Kiev. That was an extremely dangerous day." Hearing Rog's words, Kara rolled his eyes and walked straight into the hotel lobby. If one looked at it from the perspective of the purpose, his method was indeed quite boring. But isn't life made up of these boring little things? The thrilling and exciting legendary life was a privilege that only a few people had. After a sentimental sigh, he slowly walked into the hotel. According to the information, Captain Jack lived in room 703. Except for leaving the hotel every night to go to the Ecstasy night bar, Captain Jack almost never left the room. Although Captain Jack was the only one who checked in, for someone like him who worked in a special industry, he might not be the only one in the room. Knock knock knock. After arriving at the door of room 703, Kara knocked on the door. After waiting for more than 10 seconds, the closed door was opened, and Captain Jack, who was in his 40s or 50s and had a bushy beard, appeared in front of Kara. "Oh, beauty, can't you find your room?" After seeing Kara's appearance, Captain Jack said in a tone that all men understand. However, just as he was looking up and down at Kara's attractive figure, Kara suddenly lifted her 1-meter-long leg and kicked him directly. Captain Jack had never thought that Kara would actually make a move on him. Caught off guard, Captain Jack was kicked by Kara and fell to the ground in a very embarrassing manner. After doing all this, Kara slowly walked into the room as if nothing had happened. Rog, who witnessed Kara's kick, suddenly remembered a sentence that he didn't know where he had seen it before. The longer the legs, the more painful it is to kick. The thinner the heels, the higher the damage. He had never been kicked by a woman, let alone a woman wearing high heels, so he couldn't confirm whether this sentence was correct. However, judging from Captain Jack's groaning on the ground, this sentence was likely to be true. After closing the door, Rog came to Captain Jack and began his first interrogation. Although he had no experience, Captain Jack was obviously not the kind of tough guy who could ignore the damage. After casually trying out a few interrogation techniques that he had learned not long ago, Captain Jack told them the entire situation in full detail. Captain Jack did receive a commission to smuggle something to the United States, but he hadn't seen the item yet. According to the plan, he was going to the bar tonight to confirm the final delivery time, and then send the agreed goods to the United States. Only responsible for delivering the goods, not inquiring about the employer and the goods is the rule of their line of work. As long as the employer can pay according to the agreement, no matter what the goods are, they will deliver. After confirming the contact method between Captain Jack and the employer tonight, Rog directly hit Captain Jack's neck, making him completely unconscious. "Don't you need to kill him?" Kara suddenly asked. "Yes, you do it." After that, Rog gave up his position and motioned Kara to do it himself. What's wrong with people now? They want to kill people to inquire about information. Am I not keeping up with this era? Although he has killed a lot of people, those were needed for combat or missions. If you are worried that he will wake up halfway, just tie him up. Glancing at Rog, and then at the unconscious Captain Jack, Kara finally shook his head. Rog ignored Kara and began to use the transformation technique. Boom! When the white smoke dissipated, Rog had completely disappeared and was replaced by Captain Jack, who couldn't see the difference at all. Transforming into Captain Jack and coming into contact with the terrorists was a plan he had decided on early on. But what he didn't expect was that after he transformed into Captain Jack, Kara looked at him with a shocked face. "Why are you looking at me like this? It's just a transformation technique, not a high-level ninjutsu. Don't be surprised." Chapter 194. Although Kara herself had extraordinary power because of the Moonlight Stone, she still felt incredulous after seeing the scene in front of her. Not only was the appearance exactly the same, but even the lecherous expression was exactly the same. If the real Captain Jack was not lying on the ground, Kara would never believe that the Captain Jack standing in front of her was Rog. "Don't be in a daze, I'll deal with the rest alone, you go back to the safe house." What he had to face next was not a passerby or a driver, but a terrorist with high vigilance. Instead of bringing an inexperienced newcomer like Kara, it would be better to catch the terrorists in the bar. At least it would save him some effort. Although Rog didn't say it clearly, Kara understood what he meant. "You're a newcomer, don't add to the trouble. Go back to where you came from." If it was someone else who did this to her, Kara would definitely let that person enjoy the extraordinary power of the Moonlight Stone. But when that person was Rog, the situation was completely different. Kara would rather fight with the red tank than face the feeling of disgusting bugs crawling all over her body again. Thinking of this, Kara couldn't help but tremble slightly, as if there were bugs crawling on her body at this time. "Okay, then I'll go back first." Without any hesitation or dissatisfaction, Kara turned around and left decisively. When night fell, Rog, who had transformed into Captain Jack, left the hotel and took a taxi to the Ecstasy Night Bar. Before leaving the hotel, he enjoyed the highest standard dinner that the hotel could provide. As for the bill, of course, Captain Jack paid for it. Isn't it reasonable for Captain Jack to pay for what he eats? Rog thought that the bar that could be chosen by Captain Jack and the terrorists wouldn't be too bad. But when he came to the bar, he felt that he had overestimated Jack and the others. It seems that the smuggling and terrorist industries haven't made much money in the past few years. After lamenting in his heart, Roger walked into the bar that was not modern at all. Because it was still early, there weren't many guests in the bar. But with the environment of the bar, even during the night peak, it was estimated that there wouldn't be many guests. Soon, Roger saw the rumored middleman. He walked to the bar counter where the middleman was. 2 glasses of vodka, no ice. 1 for Russia and 1 for America. This secret code was really stupid. Rog said in Captain Jack's usual manner of speaking. As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man next to him turned to look at him. The bartender was not the terrorist's contact. The customer next to the bartender was. No energy reaction, ordinary person, 0 threat level. When he turned to observe the man, Rog quickly judged the man's strength. However, before the man could answer, a voice suddenly came from behind him. Old Jack, can that little boat of yours still cross the Atlantic Ocean? Don't be blown over by the storm. Who was this guy? Looking in the direction of the voice, he saw a tall man dressed like a Viking. What's wrong? You don't recognize me? Or was your brain eaten by a shark? The man who suddenly appeared mocked loudly. As long as the brain hasn't crashed, anyone can see that he was deliberately looking for trouble. Get out of here. Rog didn't know what the relationship between Captain Jack and this man was, so he could only choose to use an answer that was suitable for any relationship. Oh, I see, old Jack, you are talking about business. After that, the man came in front of the terrorist contact and patted him on the shoulder. He said without hiding anything, young man, if you want to do business, you can come to me. I'm much more reliable than old Jack. Can't let this guy continue. Rog intends to use the hypnosis ability of Sharingan to solve this guy who came out of nowhere. However, just as he was about to make a move, the man said something that completely exceeded his expectations. He is not old Jack, he is a spy for the Americans. As soon as the man who deliberately dressed like a pirate finished speaking, the terrorist's face suddenly changed, and he pulled out the pistol from his waist without thinking. Damn it! Rog cursed in his heart. At this time, the situation no longer allows him to continue to disguise, and there is no need to disguise. As soon as the terrorist's contact pulled out the pistol, Rog came in front of him lightning and grabbed his right hand holding the gun. Gotcha! With a little force, the contact's right hand was easily broken by Rog like a toothpick. After quickly solving the contact, he set his eyes on the pirate-like man. Who are you? The only person who knows that he disguised as Captain Jack is Gecko Ishikawa. At most, there are several logistics personnel in the safe house. Other than that, it is impossible for anyone to know that Captain Jack is his disguise. Of course, the man can't answer Rog's question. When Roger asked him, he pulled out a military knife that was almost 30 centimeters long from his back belt. Playing with a knife in front of me? Rog smiled helplessly when he saw the man's eagerness after he pulled out his military knife. Less than 10 seconds, to be precise, 3 seconds. The knife in the man's hand was in his hand. After casually waving the knife in his hand, Rog asked again, last chance, who are you? The result was no different from the previous one, the man still didn't intend to answer the question. For the man's choice, Rog felt a trace of regret. Then, he returned the military knife to the man. However, the man didn't catch the knife in a different way from ordinary people. He used his forehead to catch the saber that was flying towards him at lightning speed. Thump. The sound of falling to the ground sounded. Rog ignored the man who came out of nowhere, directly grabbed the contact whose right hand was broken, and took him out of the bar. On a rooftop near the bar. Why? Why did you do this to me? Rog said helplessly, his face full of disappointment. The contact looked at the annoyed Rog with a confused face, completely unable to guess what he was going to do. I planned to be a proper ninja, collect intelligence, sneak in, eliminate the target, and complete the mission. Why can't you let me complete all the procedures? As soon as his voice faded, Rog's eyes fell on the contact. I'm in a bad mood now, so I sincerely remind you, don't have any thoughts you shouldn't have. Otherwise, I'll chop you up. After that, he took out the bone knife that he took from the roadside restaurant. Chapter 195. Chop you up. Glancing at the oily bone knife in Rog's hand, the terrorist couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Compared to Rog's threat, what surprised the terrorist was Rog's identity. After arriving at the roof, Rog lifted the effect of the transformation technique and changed back to his original appearance. When he changed back to his original appearance, the terrorist recognized his identity. Fourth Hokage. He is the captain of the Thunder Agents, Fourth Hokage. Oh, you don't have to threaten me, you don't dare to chop me up. The world-famous superhero Fourth Hokage can't chop me up, unless you don't want the reputation of a superhero anymore. Do it, lackeys of the US government, you don't deserve to be called a hero. Do it. After recognizing Rog's identity, the terrorist not only did not have any fear, but he began to clamor. It has to be said that this terrorist's imagination is quite good to be able to think of so many things in such a short time. But there is one thing he didn't think of, that is, Rog is not an ordinary superhero. In other words, Rog never thought of himself as a superhero. Compared to the hardships of being a superhero, he wanted to be a carefree anti-hero. When he is happy, he will save the world. When he is not happy, the world will do whatever it wants. Since you asked for it, then I will satisfy you. After saying that, Rog came to the front of the terrorist lying on the ground and squatted down with a calm face. Judging from your action of pulling out the gun, your habitual hand is right hand. So, let's start with the left hand. As soon as his voice fell, Rog raised the bone knife in his hand and chopped at the terrorist's left hand without hesitation. Dang! The bone-chopping knife's blade hit the ground hard, making a dull sound. When the bone knife was raised, the terrorist's left wrist rolled a few times on the ground. Ah! The terrorist never thought that Rog would really dare to do it, and he was so determined and calm. Shoo! This is just the beginning. The main event is coming up. Do your best. Rog raised his left index finger to his lips and shushed her. Then, he ignored the terrorist's screams, and ignored the blood spurting out of the wound on his left hand. He raised the bone-chopping knife again. Clang! There was another sound of metal colliding with the ground. The terrorist's left upper arm was also detached from his body. No, stop, don't, the terrorist began to struggle with all his might. However, Rog was still unmoved. He raised the machete in his hand for the third time. Go ahead and ask. How am I supposed to answer if you don't ask? Go ahead and ask. Seeing the chopping knife raised once again, the terrorist shouted loudly, as if this could disperse the intense pain from his left hand. Is that so? Then it seems that this is my fault. At the same time, the bone-chopping knife fell again, cutting off the terrorist's remaining forearm. No. It's not your fault. I beg you, please ask, please. The terrorist was still screaming, but his tone had become much weaker. He didn't know if it was because the previous scream damaged his throat, or because he lost too much blood. Very good, it seems that now you know how to cooperate. After wiping the blood-stained bone-chopping knife on the terrorist's clothes, Rog said calmly. The following questioning was unusually smooth, and he soon got the information he wanted. Give me a quick death. The terrorist didn't have any intention of leaving here alive. The only thing he wanted now was to end his life happily. Actually, I have never had the habit of killing captives, but I can satisfy your last request. A finger snap suddenly sounded. Rog in front of the terrorist suddenly disappeared like a bubble. The blood on the ground and the broken arm also disappeared. Even the intense pain that made the terrorist hover between life and death disappeared in an instant. The terrorist didn't realize what had happened. He saw Rog standing a few meters away. From the beginning to the end, what he felt was the genjutsu of the Sharingan. Rog's left hand was holding the bone-chopping knife that made him tremble with fear, and his empty right hand was in the posture of a pistol. Water release, water iron cannon technique. Puff. A liquid bullet pierced the terrorist's forehead, completely ending his life. This terrorist was not an important person. According to him, he was just a contact, so he didn't know where the nuclear warhead was. In the information he provided, there were only 3 points that were slightly valuable. The first was that the terrorists intended to send the goods out as soon as possible. If there was no problem, they hoped to send the goods on the ship at 3:00 in the morning. The second was that this time, there were not many people in charge of transporting the nuclear warhead, only about 20 or 30 people, and the nuclear warhead was now in a warehouse in the city. Although Kiev wasn't an international metropolis, it was still the capital of Ukraine. In this city, there were at least thousands of large and small warehouses. It was not easy to find the one where the terrorists placed the nuclear warhead in these warehouses. As for the third information, it was the most useful one at present. That was, the contact information provided by the contact. Although the contact didn't know where the nuclear warhead was placed in the warehouse, he knew how to contact the terrorists who were guarding it. According to the original plan, after confirming the final time with Captain Jack, he would contact the terrorists and inform them of the final result. Although there were some accidents, the terrorists may not know what happened in the bar now. As long as he could use the identity of the contact to lure the terrorists out, or directly locate their location when contacting them, then everything would become simple again. Of course, the premise of all this was based on the premise that the terrorists didn't know what happened in the bar. After throwing away the bone-chopping knife in his hand, Rog teleported back to the safe house with the Flying Thunder God and roughly explained the current situation to Kara and others. When the logistics technicians in the safe house were ready, Rog asked a technician who could speak Ukrainian to make a call. Although the voice of the technician was not the same as the contact, there was no other way. Rog could transform into the appearance of the contact, but the problem was that he didn't speak Ukrainian. The contact could speak English because the person he wanted to contact was the UA Captain Jack, which may be the reason why he was chosen as the contact. More than 20 seconds later, the phone was still not connected. Chapter 196. Just when everyone thought that no one would answer the phone, the call was suddenly connected. At #%#yen there was an authentic Ukrainian voice on the phone. But except for the technician who made the call, no one present understood the meaning of this sentence. The technician quickly replied and communicated with the terrorist on the other end of the phone. Although they couldn't understand their conversation, judging from the current situation, the terrorist guarding the nuclear warhead didn't know what happened in the bar. When the Ukrainian technician communicated with the terrorist, the remaining technicians quickly began to track and locate the phone. Although these technicians are not professional agents from the CIB and SHIELD, it is not difficult for them to track the location of a phone call. The terrorist on the other end of the phone didn't realize anything, and the technician on the safe house side had already completed the location. The signal came from a warehouse on the outskirts of Kiev. Mr. Rog, I told them the time and place of receiving the goods tonight according to your request, and they will arrive at the port on time with the goods. After the call ended, the technician in charge of the call reported to Rog. Rog didn't have any military rank, but his identity as the captain of the Thunder agents made him the highest-ranking person on the scene. Thank you for your hard work. But they won't have a chance to arrive at the port on time. It was only 8:00 in the evening, more than 6 hours away from the agreed 3:00 in the morning. Rog didn't intend to waste time here, so he planned to go directly to the warehouse located and solve all the problems at once. Put on your battle suit, we should go. It was also time to end this agent game. After hearing Rog's words, Moonlight Shkala didn't hesitate and immediately went to the room and changed back to the white uniform that fully highlighted her graceful figure. Finally, the fight was about to start, and Shkala's expression gradually became excited. More than 20 minutes later, Rog and Shkala arrived near the warehouse on the outskirts. After arriving near the warehouse, Rog didn't launch an attack immediately, but used chakra to perceive the situation of the warehouse. 34 ordinary humans didn't have any abnormal energy response. He couldn't sense whether the nuclear warhead was inside. He could only sense life energy and energy intensity, and radioactive materials such as nuclear materials were not in his sensing range. Unless the nuclear warhead exploded, he would not be able to sense the location of the explosion. But at that time, it didn't matter whether he could sense it or not. There aren't many enemies inside, and their weapons are just some conventional gunpowder weapons, so it's not very difficult to deal with them. According to Ross's request, I need you to grow up as soon as possible so that you can become superheroes who can take charge of things on your own. So, you'll be in charge of the main attack, and I'll be in charge of covering you. Unless you really can't handle it, or if your life is in danger, I will only help. Do you understand? This was something that Rog and Ross had agreed upon a long time ago. While he was the captain of the Thunderbolt's Secret Service team, he had to do his best to help the other members grow. Of course, this so-called growth was not for him to teach the other members how to fight, but for them to gain more combat experience. Simply put, he was the last line of insurance for the Thunderbolt's Secret Service team. If Moonlight, Scala, and the other team members could solve the quest by themselves, then he could do nothing. But if they couldn't solve it, or if their lives were in danger, he would be responsible for dealing with the aftermath. Of course, this was only limited to when he was participating in a mission. Understood. Scala had no objection to Rog's arrangement. And she didn't think that the terrorists in the warehouse could pose any threat to her. Although she wasn't a battle-hardened existence like Rog, and her power wasn't obtained through her own efforts, the extraordinary ability given to her by the Moonstone was enough for her to deal with most of the enemies. After instructing Scala, Rog didn't say anything else. What he had to do now was to enjoy Moonlight Scala's performance. After calming down a little, Scala walked straight to the door of the warehouse, intending to attack it head-on. Rog didn't say anything about Scala's choice. As long as Scala didn't die here, it didn't matter. It was unknown whether the terrorists in the warehouse weren't vigilant enough, or they didn't worry about any enemy attack at all. Scala, who was exuding orange-white light from head to toe, was unhindered and went directly to the door of the warehouse. Moonlight Scala was obviously not the kind of person who would sneak in and secretly deal with the enemy. After coming to the warehouse door, she raised her hands and launched an orange-white beam of light. Boom! The beam of light hit the dilapidated door of the warehouse without any suspense, blasting a big hole in the door. The huge sound resounded throughout the warehouse in an instant, and the terrorists in the warehouse understood the situation at this time even if they were slow to react. There are enemies attacking. It didn't take long for fierce gunshots to ring out in the warehouse. After entering the warehouse, Scala, who was exuding orange-white light, flew into the air and constantly fired energy beams from her hands, attacking all the terrorists who appeared in front of her like an energy turret. At this time, Rog stood dozens of meters behind Scala, silently observing her battle while paying attention to the movements of the terrorists. Although Scala didn't have much combat experience, she easily gained the upper hand with the extraordinary ability given by the Moonlight Gem. Judging from the current situation, it won't take long for Scala to solve all the terrorists in the warehouse and complete the mission smoothly. However, the terrorists who can buy nuclear warheads from the Russian black market are obviously not rookies. They may not have any extraordinary abilities, nor do they have high-tech weapons like Hydra or S.H.I.E.L.D. But they have as many conventional gunpowder weapons as they want. After finding that ordinary bullets couldn't penetrate the energy shield around Scala's body, these terrorists didn't hesitate and directly moved out their heavy weapons. Anti-material sniper rifles, rocket launchers, Gatling guns. Rog even saw that the Javelin anti-tank missile developed by the United States on them. These terrorists were well armed. Even ordinary US soldiers might not be as well armed as them. When the terrorists took out their heavy weapons, Scala completely gained the upper hand in the battle and the situation began to change. Boom! 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 Rockets and missiles continued to explode around Scala, and the shock waves and airwaves caused by the explosions made Scala, who was flying in the air, float around like a kite with a broken string. Chapter 197. Still not enough experience. If Kara had been a little more cautious, instead of relying on her extraordinary ability to go on a rampage, she would definitely not have been used as a target by the terrorists. The bullets from the Gatling gun hit Kara's energy shield like a storm, creating ripples on the energy shield. What's worse, because of the suppression of the Gatling gun, Kara couldn't care about other attacks. Rockets and anti-tank missiles exploded one after another in front of her. If it weren't for the moonlight gem, Kara would have been blown to pieces. Rog thought that he could easily watch the battle as a spectator, and then smoothly end the mission. But Carla's performance directly shattered his beautiful dream. He really didn't want to do it. Although he thought so, he still summoned his new Haori, the Yondaime Hokage's white Haori. Along with the Haori, dozens of flying Thor kunai were summoned. Although there were only 9 flying Thor kunai enchanted by Odin, but for a ninja who regarded flying Thor as a talent, how could he not have flying Thor kunai? In his summon scroll, there were a total of 300 flying Thor kunai. Don't ask why he saved so many. If you ask, it's because he has too much money. After putting on the Haori, Rog began to use his ninjutsu. Wood release, wooden spindle wall. In the blink of an eye, a semicircular wall made of wood appeared in front of Kara, completely enveloping her. Lightning body flicker. What followed after the wooden spindle wall wasn't flying Thor, but lightning body flicker. Rog's figure disappeared in an instant, and a weak electric current that had yet to dissipate appeared where he had been standing. Leave the rest to me. As soon as his voice fell, Rog picked up Kara, who was half kneeling on the ground, and once again used lightning body flicker. The next second, he carried Kara to a corner of the warehouse, and then directly put Kara down. It felt good. After putting Kara down, he disappeared again. Until now, the terrorists did not know that Kara was no longer behind the wooden spindle wall. Bullets and missiles continued to bombard the wooden walls, and dazzling explosions continued to rise. Although the sudden appearance of the wooden spindle wall surprised these terrorists, they did not associate the wooden spindle wall with Rog. It was common knowledge that his superpower was the ability to control lightning. Rog had no intention of correcting these terrorists' thoughts. While they were crazily attacking the wooden spindle wall, he had the shadow doppelganger throw the dozens of Thor kunai that he had summoned to every corner of the warehouse. After the shadow doppelganger was done, he walked into the terrorists' line of sight. Seeing Rog walking out from the shadows, these terrorists first revealed a trace of doubt, then their complexions suddenly changed, and they immediately turned the muzzle. When they first saw Kara, they felt that Kara was very similar to the superhero Moonlight Stone from the Thunder Secret Service. It's just that Kara did not show superpowers at the press conference, so even if she was wearing the same battle suit, they did not immediately confirm Kara's identity. However, when Rog came out in a white Haori, they finally confirmed this guess. Thunder Secret Service's Moonlight Stone Kara, and the 4th Hokage Rog. These terrorists didn't take Kara, a new superhero, too seriously. In their view, Moonlight Stone Kara was nothing more than an idol promoted by the UA government, a trick used to fool the people. Kara, who had no record, of course, could not be taken seriously by them. However, Log was different. He was a ferocious man with actual battle records. When anyone mentioned him, they would involuntarily think of the scenes of him killing the alien soldiers in New York. A person's name, a tree's shadow. No matter how arrogant these terrorists were, they would not think that they would be a match for Rog, who could cut down aliens like vegetables. For a while, all the muzzles and cannons were aimed at him. Looking at these terrorists who seemed to be facing a great enemy, Roger suddenly sighed. He didn't know when he would be able to get the same treatment as Minato. If I encounter a golden flash, I can give up the mission without any punishment. I have to continue to work hard. And Rog hoped that his future treatment would be a little higher than Minato's. Minato's treatment was only limited to the ninja world, and he hoped that his treatment would be universal. But this kind of thing can only be thought in his mind for the time being. He has not received this kind of treatment on Earth, let alone the whole universe. Although this goal is a bit far away, it is also a direction worth working towards. When the terrorists aimed all their muzzles at Rog, Kara, who was placed in the corner of the warehouse by Rog, also sneaked out. She wanted to see how Rog would deal with these terrorists. Rog is strong, she knows this, but she wants to know how strong Rog is. Kara, who personally experienced the bombardment of modern gunpowder weapons, wanted to see how big the gap between herself and Rog is. Cheer up. The opposite is the Yondaime Hokage. As long as we kill him, the entire United States government will be afraid of us. He is only one person, don't be afraid. These terrorists shouted loudly one after another in Ukrainian. Rog couldn't understand what they were saying, but this didn't affect what he was going to do next. They saw him suddenly take out a flying Thor kunai and play with it in his right hand. Just when everyone thought that he was going to use the flying Thor kunai to launch an attack, he suddenly threw the kunai up. Da-da-da-da-da, at the moment when he threw the kunai, the terrorists who were already prepared didn't hesitate and immediately pulled the trigger. However, their attack was destined to have no effect. The moment the flying Thor kunai left his hand, Rog disappeared with the flying thunder god. The bullets and missiles flew directly over his original position, hitting the wall behind him, the ground, and the container. These gunshots almost stopped abruptly, and a sudden strange silence quickly enveloped the entire warehouse. At the same time when the gunshots stopped, Rog's figure reappeared in the original position, and his right hand easily caught the flying Thor kunai that had not yet fallen to the ground. Done, done. When he put away the flying Thor kunai in his hand, there was a burst of falling sounds in other parts of the warehouse. It's over. Kara thought that she would be able to see a wonderful battle, but the reality was completely different from what she had imagined. The only thing she saw was that Rog suddenly disappeared, and then suddenly reappeared, and then there was no more. How is this possible? What did he do? Is he really human? Chapter 198. Inform the military to deal with the aftermath. I'll go back first. Rog ignored Kara, who was in a state of shock and confusion, and directly ordered. Taking care of more than 20 ordinary terrorists in one go was nothing to be surprised about. Minato can kill 50 rock shinobis at once with the same flying Thor. Compared with the rock shinobis, the terrorists don't seem to be on the same level. Not to mention that the number of enemies is only about half of Minato's. Before the flying thunder god left the warehouse, Rog didn't forget to let the shadow clone recover the Thor that was thrown out. Until Rog's figure completely disappeared, Kara still couldn't believe the scene in front of him. So many terrorists, how could they die so easily? Even if there were more than 20 chickens, they wouldn't die so easily. Rog didn't pay attention to what happened next in the warehouse, but the day after he returned to New York, he saw Ross once again hold a press conference. All 3 missions were successfully completed. The Thunder Secret Service team finally delivered the first answer sheet as a superhero team. Before Ross held the press conference, Rog received 30 ninja coins from the system. Unconsumed ninja coins, 335. After redeeming King Kong's seal and 4 symbols seal, his ninja coins that didn't change for a long time finally began to increase again. After announcing his identity in public, he can no longer receive ninja coins through Konoha's company as before. But this doesn't have much impact on him. As early as half a year ago, he used Konoha's company to accept commissions, but none of them passed the judgment of the system, and he wasted several commission scrolls. Since then, he rarely personally executed the commissions received by Konoha. Just when Rog was enjoying his rare leisure time, a fierce father and son quarrel occurred in the hall of Asgard's Golden Palace, far away from the earth. You are taking a risk. If you fail, the weapon will fall into the hands of the enemy. Odin, holding the Gungnir, stood in the hall of the Golden Palace, which was originally magnificent, but now seriously damaged, and directly rejected Thor's proposal. It will only be more dangerous if we just sit here and wait. His fleet may be hovering above us right now, and we won't know. Thor did not give up and continued to persuade Odin. When he arrives, his men will be defeated by tens of thousands of Asgard soldiers. Odin remained unmoved. Then how many people do we have to sacrifice? Thor also insisted on his suggestion. No matter how much we sacrifice, I won't hesitate. Odin's tone suddenly became fierce. We will fight until the last Asgard is dead, until the Asgard's blood runs dry. Then what's the difference between you and Malekith? The difference is that I will eventually win. Odin left the hall of the Golden Palace, looking exhausted. The invasion of the Dark Elves and the death of Queen Scarlet made this king, who was no longer young, look even more aged. Watching Odin leave, Thor stayed in place silently, then said in a voice that only he could hear, "I will protect Asgard, in my own way." A few hours later, Thor learned of the latest order issued by Odin. Close Bifrost, no one is allowed to enter or leave Asgard. If even I can't see the enemy, then who can? After the military meeting, Heimdall, the guardian of Bifrost, found Thor in the tavern and said helplessly, "Malekith will come back, you and I know this very well. We need the help of others, a reinforcement from another planet." After drinking the beer in the cup, Thor said meaningfully, "We can't contact him, and even if we can, he can't come to Asgard." Heimdall immediately understood what Thor meant. "No, I can get in touch with him." When night fell, Thor gathered Sif, Fandral, and Volstagg and went to a secret room in the Golden Palace with Heimdall. "What I want you to do is the most serious crime of treason. Even if we succeed, we will be exiled, and if we fail, we will die. Malekith knows that the ether particle is here, he can sense its energy. If we don't take action, he will lead the Dark Elves to attack again, but this time, he will completely destroy Asgard. We have to take Jane away from here, so that Asgard will not become a battlefield again," Thor said with a serious face. This was his way of protecting Asgard, completely different from Odin's. But Bifrost has been closed, and the Tesseract is locked in the palace's treasury. Moreover, we are no match for Malekith. There are only a few of us, we can't defeat him, and we can't protect the ether particle in Jane's body. Sif did not object to Thor's proposal, but the key problem was that they could not leave Asgard now. Even if they left, they could not defeat Malekith, the king of the Dark Elves. This was undoubtedly giving the ether particle to Malekith. There are other ways to leave Asgard, and not many people know about these ways. To be precise, there is only one. In addition, this time, we are not the only ones in this operation. We will have a very powerful reinforcement. As soon as he finished speaking, Thor took out a scroll that did not belong to Asgard. This is... The moment they saw the scroll, Sif and the others immediately thought of something. Although the color was a little different, this scroll was very similar to the commissioned scroll they had seen before. "This is a gift that Rog gave me when I went to New York last time. If one day you need my help, you can open this scroll." These were the original words he said to me. Although that was what he said, Thor did not know what effect this scroll had. But now, this scroll was the only way he could contact Rog. Is this really useful? This place is very far from Earth. Without the help of Bifrost, not many people can cross such a long distance to Asgard. As someone who had witnessed Rog's battle with her own eyes, Sif did not doubt Rog's strength. However, this kind of ultra-long-distance transmission across interstellar space was not something that anyone could do. Even Asgard, without Bifrost, could only obediently build ultra-long-distance transmission magic arrays. And as far as she knew, Rog did not know magic, so it was impossible for him to build any transmission magic arrays. "I don't know, but I'm willing to try." After saying that, Thor directly opened the unknown scroll that Rog gave him. Chapter 199. Bang! As soon as Thor opened the scroll, a cloud of white smoke appeared out of thin air in the room. When the smoke dissipated, Rog's figure appeared in front of them. Did he really come to Asgard? Thor and the others looked at Rog in disbelief and couldn't react for a while. I'm not the main body, I'm just a shadow clone of the main body." After seeing the puzzled look on Thor and the others' faces, the shadow clone immediately explained. "This scroll isn't a teleportation scroll, it's just a simple shadow clone scroll. Rog left a shadow clone technique in the scroll, and he also left enough chakra technique in the scroll. This kind of scroll can be exchanged in the system, and the price isn't expensive, 1 ninja coin can be exchanged for 1. Can you get in touch with Log? Is he the main body you mentioned?" Although Saul didn't know what kind of connection there was between the shadow doppelganger and the original body, since Rog left a shadow doppelganger in the scroll, This shadow doppelganger must have a special use. No. The doppelganger answered straightforwardly. Thor's face suddenly became a little ugly. At this time, the shadow clone continued, although I can't contact the main body can sense my presence, and he will come over in a while. After saying that, the shadow clone ignored the strange expression of Thor and the others and signaled them to make a space. At the same time, Rog, who is far away in New York, sensed the appearance of the shadow clone. The long distance between the Earth and Asgard can't prevent the side effects of the shadow clone, and a part of the chakra in Rog's body disappeared out of thin air. I didn't expect this plan to be useful one day. He did give the scroll to Thor, but he can't be sure whether Thor will really use it or not. After taking a few deep breaths, he went to the training room and summoned a shadow clone. No matter what the result is, you have to summon the Shikatsu forest again in 10 minutes. If I'm still inside, remember to get me out. The shadow clone nodded and directly summoned the Shikatsu forest in the training room. Inherent barrier, Shikatsu forest. In just a moment, the training room was transformed into a Shikatsu forest that contains rich natural energy. The Shikatsu forest summoned by the shadow clone wasn't that big, only about 10 square meters. It didn't even cover the entire training room. However, the current Logue did not need a large area of the wetbone forest. The shadow clone's plan, the size of the forest is not the size of the plan. After the shadow doppelganger summoned the wetbone forest, Rog went straight to the wetbone forest that looked like a little garden. He summoned a rectangular iron box. The iron box is about 2 meters long, half a meter, and from the outside, it looked like a coffin. Well, it is a coffin of the coffin, but it's a metal coffin. The outer layer is vibranium and the inner layer is URU metal. Remember, no matter what happens, you have to summon the Shikatsu forest again in 10 minutes. If this thing is still inside, save me. If it's not, you have to remove it yourself. Rog sighed helplessly and opened the coffin. He laid down in it and let the shadow clone close the lid of the coffin. What bad luck. Regardless of whether the plan succeeds or not, he has to ask for compensation from Thor. Or else, it won't be able to make up for the mental damage. Before this, he had experimented on chimpanzees and other animals over 100 times, and none of them had failed. However, an experiment was just an experiment. No one could guarantee what would happen when they actually operated it. What if Lady Luck is not happy these few days and gives him a debuff? It's not impossible. The theory behind this interstellar teleportation is actually very simple. It uses the only effect of the Shikatsu forest. No matter where the Shikatsu forest is summoned, the same Shikatsu forest will appear. Although only one Shikatsu forest can be summoned at a time, as long as the timing is arranged, the teleportation method can be executed smoothly. First, the Shikatsu forest will be summoned on Earth and the express delivery will be placed in the forest. Then, the Shikatsu forest will be removed from Earth. After the storage on Earth is completed, Asgard's shadow clone will summon the Shikatsu forest again and the express delivery will be retrieved. This way, the entire process of the express delivery will be completed. The reason why Rog gave Thor a shadow clone scroll was so that Thor would have a specialized delivery boy. The principle behind the entire process was flawless. He had also tested it over 100 times on Earth. However, the area he tested was limited to Earth. Therefore, when he started the interstellar express delivery, he couldn't help but feel nervous. Rog realized for the first time that 5 minutes was so long. Just as he was considering whether or not he should open the ceiling that had been sealed for 5 minutes was finally opened. The first thing that appeared in front of him was his own face. Shadow clone scroll. From the angle of lying down, he still looked very handsome. As expected, my handsomeness is 360 degrees. After seeing the shadow clone, a strange thought suddenly popped up in Rog's mind. After coming out of the metal box, he saw Thor and the others who were in a daze. What, have you never seen a handsome guy climb out of a coffin before? This kind of attitude is definitely Rog himself. After confirming that it was Rog who climbed out of the coffin, Thor immediately went forward and gave him a warm hug. Enough, if you're Sif, I don't mind letting you hug me for a little longer. After saying that, Rog pushed away Thor, who was a little too enthusiastic. When he was on Earth, he didn't see this guy being so enthusiastic. When Rog came out, the Shadow Clone Scroll removed the Shikatsu forest and then removed its own existence. Since the original body was here, the Shadow Clone Scroll naturally had to leave. Tell me, why did you call me here this time? After observing the expressions of Sif and the others and the room that was not gorgeous at all, Rog directly asked. If there was nothing, Thor would never have let him come. We have to leave Asgard and deal with Malekith. In the following time, Thor roughly explained the current situation to Rog. The invasion of the Dark Elves, the death of Queen Scarlet, the ether particles on Jane, the imprisoned Loki, and the grieving Odin. Chapter 200. Thor's plan was as simple and crude as ever. The only thing that had improved was that he no longer underestimated any enemy. However, Malekith, the king of the Dark Elves, was indeed not an opponent to be underestimated. Not to mention the results of Malekith's attack on Asgard this time. A long time ago, Malekith's enemy was Thor's grandfather, the previous king of Asgard, King Bauer. Although he lost the battle and his ether was taken away, Malekith still lived to this day. Generally speaking, the king of the Dark Elves, Malekith, was an opponent who was not lacking in both martial strength and strategy. Rog has arrived, so what we have to do next is to bring Loki out of the dungeon. Only he knows how to secretly leave Asgard without using the Bifrost. As soon as Thor finished speaking, Volstark, who was sitting next to him, shook his head helplessly. I know you don't like Loki, but we can only rely on him now. Thor knew very well what others thought of Loki. If it weren't for his and Queen Freyja's insistence, Loki might have been sentenced to death by Odin the day he was brought back to Asgard. Well, let me interrupt you first. In order to come here from Earth, I personally suffered some serious mental damage, so I hope you can make it up to me afterwards, Thor. In addition, although everyone is already very familiar with each other, we still have to follow the procedures. Write this commission scroll first. Rog directly summoned an unconsumed commission scroll and placed it in front of Thor. The reward I want is very simple. After this matter is over, I hope you can take me to Nidavellir and ask them to help me make a set of armor. He now only has a set of armor similar to Madara's, but after he changed his title, this set of armor can no longer match his image. No problem. Thor was already used to Rog's commission habit. Even if he didn't say anything, Thor would give him a satisfactory reward after the matter was over. Commission content: defeat Malekith. Commission status: incomplete. Commission reward: 250 ninja coins. Just as Rog had predicted, Thor's request successfully passed the system's judgment. The only thing he didn't expect was that the reward given by the system was as high as 250 ninja coins. What was going on? Malekith was just a boss in Thor's personal dungeon. How could there be such a high reward? In the last battle of New York, the system only gave him 200 ninja coins as a reward. Was Malekith that strong? Rog began to think seriously, and his intuition told him that this matter might not be as simple as he thought. After returning the scroll to Rog, Thor began to assign tasks to Sif and the others. There wouldn't be many people leaving Asgard, including Loki. There would be at most 4 people. Sif and the others wouldn't leave Asgard. Their task was only to contain Asgard's guard army. The Prince of Asgard, the next king of Asgard, was planning to break through the defense line of Asgard's soldiers. It was ironic. After instructing Sif and the others, they left the dark secret room and began to perform their respective tasks. According to Thor's request, Rog transformed into a royal guard and followed him like a guard. They were now going to the dungeon to rescue Loki. Without Loki, their plan to leave Asgard could basically be declared a failure. Thor, it's been so long, you came to see me now? When the two of them arrived at Loki's private cell, Loki took the lead in speaking. After speaking, Loki suddenly turned his head and glanced at the royal guard behind Thor. For some reason, Loki always felt that there was something wrong with this royal guard. However, most of his attention was now on Thor, so he didn't continue to investigate. It was just a strange royal guard, nothing to pay attention to. Looking at Loki in the cell, Thor didn't say a word. He looked at his brother who had lived with him for thousands of years with a complicated expression. Are you here to gloat? Loki spoke again, and his tone began to be sarcastic. Loki, that's enough, don't use illusions anymore. Thor ignored Loki's sarcasm and said calmly. As soon as Thor finished speaking, Loki disappeared in front of them, and the tidy cell also changed. Loki, with disheveled hair, sat among the broken furniture and leaned against the innermost wall, his face full of loneliness. Now you see, my brother. Thor came to the other side of the cell and began to move his wrist. Is it painful for her to leave? I'm not here to mourn mother with you, I'm here to give you a chance to get something better. Loki looked at Thor in confusion, and for a moment, he didn't understand what Thor was going to do. Just say it. I know you want revenge as much as I do. If you help me escape from Asgard, I'll give you a chance to take revenge, and then put you back here. After listening to Thor's words, Loki suddenly laughed. You must be desperate, so you came to me for help. Why do you think you can trust me? After a few seconds of silence, Thor replied, I don't trust you, but Mother does. You have to know, when we fought in the past, I still had a glimmer of hope that my brother hadn't completely disappeared. That glimmer of hope is gone, and I can no longer protect you. If you dare to betray me, I'll kill you. Listening to the conversation between Thor and Loki, Rog really wanted to say to Thor, no, you won't kill Loki, you're a brother Khan from head to toe. When do we leave? Looking at the serious look on Saul's face, Loki gave his answer. For other Asgard people, it might be difficult to release a prisoner from the prison. But for Thor, it was just a matter of words. However, Thor didn't expect that Loki's first words after he came out would be, what do you plan to do with this royal guard? He'll definitely tell Odin, and then you and I won't be able to go anywhere. Can I turn him into a sheep? Or let him sleep for a month? If it wasn't for Thor's presence, Loki's first choice wouldn't be to turn into a sheep or sleep, but the more direct eternal sleep. Up to you, if you can do it. Thor didn't intend to stop Loki. It's just a small royal guard, no one will care. Loki showed his natural evil smile and went straight to the royal guard, and then he heard a somewhat familiar voice. If you dare to do this, I promise you can only use your left hand to cast spells. Chapter 201. This voice? It's Rog, the self-proclaimed ninja Rog. Although Loki has only seen Rog a few times, he has firmly remembered Rog's voice. He would never forget that it was Log who had ruined his plans time and time again, causing him to walk step by step into the tragic situation he was in today. The smile on Loki's face suddenly disappeared, his whole body involuntarily took a few steps back, his hands immediately surged with a strange magical light. Kill this guy, use his blood to wash away his anger. As soon as this idea came to his mind, it was thrown to the back of his mind. Oh, I didn't expect you to come, it seems that my brother is well prepared this time. After looking at Rog vigilantly for a few seconds, Loki removed the magical light surging in his hands and restored his original expression of wanting to see the world in chaos. Because I know you're here, I came specially, isn't it a surprise? Bang! As soon as he finished speaking, Rog removed the effect of the transformation technique and changed back to his original appearance. Next time, let's find a time to have a fair fight. That being said, but Rog is very clear that Loki's so-called fair basically means unfair. Do as you like, as long as you can bear the consequences. Rog replied without showing any weakness. Although Loki has a lot of small tricks, his overall strength is limited, so he doesn't need to worry too much. Let's talk about that later, we have to leave Asgard as soon as possible. Thor is very clear about the character of Loki and Rog, he is too lazy to stop the two of them from fighting. Under Thor's lead, the three of them quickly left the dungeon and moved quickly in the Golden Palace. This kind of secret operation is too unlike your style, You even called Rog. You really don't consider using brute force to fight your way out. That would be much easier. Maybe it's because he has been imprisoned for too long, but after leaving the dungeon, Loki suddenly turned into a chatterbox. He has been chattering in front of Thor and Rog. Where's your doppelganger? Why don't you summon hundreds of doppelganger to attract the attention of the guards? This way we can leave more easily. After talking to Saul, Loki turned his head and said to Roger, "Don't worry." Thor, who has been keeping a straight face, began to warn Loki, "If you don't shut up, I'm going to do it." "Well, I'll listen to you, I'm not here." As soon as his voice fell, Loki used an illusion technique to turn himself into the appearance of the palace guards. "How? I'm not worse than you are, I'm one of the best mages in Asgard. If you don't shut up, I'm going to do it." Roger also began to warn Loki. He began to understand why Loki was held in solitary confinement. It's not because of his identity as a former prince, nor is it because he's too dangerous, it's purely because this guy talks too much. Sooner or later, the prisoners in the same cell with him will go insane. But I think we can keep a lower profile. Loki removed the transformation effect on himself, and then threw an illusion effect on Thor. "My brother, you're so beautiful." Loki turned Thor into Sif's appearance. He originally planned to use an illusion on Rog, but in the end, he dismissed the idea. "Even if you become like this, I can still make you die miserably." Saul lowered his head to look at his current appearance and said in a calm tone, "Well, maybe you want your new friends more, after all, you seem to like them very much." Loki removed the transformation effect on Thor's body, and then turned himself into the appearance of Rogers of the American team. "This is much better, but the clothes don't fit well, it's too tight. But that confidence, I can feel justice surging in my body. Do you want to talk to me about the truth, or honor? God bless America." Before Loki could finish, Thor pressed him against the stone pillar next to him and covered his mouth. "What are you doing?" Loki pulled away Thor's right hand that was covering his mouth, and then looked in the direction of Thor's gaze. It was two palace guards who were patrolling. "You should at least give me a weapon, my dagger or something." As soon as Loki finished speaking, he saw two kunai appear in front of him. "Take it, if you talk nonsense again, I don't mind beating you up first, and then taking you away." Rog didn't know how Thor endured Loki for thousands of years, but in these few minutes, he had several thoughts of making Loki mute. After seeing Rog take out the kunai, Thor silently took back the handcuffs that had not yet been handed out. After going to the predetermined location and waiting for a few minutes, Sif came to them with Jane. The moment they saw Jane, Thor and Rog's eyes lit up at the same time. Thor's eyes lit up because he saw his beloved woman. Rog was different, he felt the ether particles in Jane's body. With the experience of the mind gem, he did not let his mental power go too deep into Jane's body. Even so, he still felt an indescribably powerful force. Ether particles, or reality gem. He began to understand why Malekith was still obsessed with ether particles even after so many years had passed. This power is really tempting. Jane ignored Thor and Rog, but went straight to Loki, and then raised her right hand. Slap. The crisp sound of a slap was heard. This slap is for New York. Although he was slapped, Loki was not as angry as they imagined. Instead, he showed a charming smile and turned to Thor and said, "I like her." "Okay, stop fooling around, we don't have much time." Although Odin was tricked by Heimdall to go to the Bifrost, it would not take long. Odin could return to the Golden Palace at any time. Sure enough, just as Thor finished speaking, two groups of palace guards appeared on the other side of the passage. "They're there, catch them." "I'll hold them back, you guys go." Sif decisively took on the task of bringing up the rear. Just as Loki was about to leave with Thor, the magic sword in Sif's hand, gift of Gaia, was placed on Loki's neck. "If you dare to betray him, I'll kill you." "I'm glad to see you too, Sif." Loki did not take Sif's threat to heart at all and replied with a smile. "I'll leave a shadow clone to help you, it can buy more time." As soon as he finished speaking, a shadow clone appeared beside Sif. Sif and the shadow clone stayed behind to bring up the rear, while Thor and the other three quickly rushed to the Golden Palace Hall. There was their transportation to leave Asgard, a small spaceship left behind by the Dark Elves. Before boarding the ship, Volstagg stopped Loki. "You dare to betray him." Before Volstagg could finish, Loki took the initiative to say, "You'll kill me? Then you'll have to line up." Chapter 202. Although Thor did not use Thor's hammer to carve out a bloody path in Asgard, to be honest, the plan to drive the Dark Elf spaceship away was not much better. Especially when none of the 4 people on the ship knew how to drive the spaceship. "Are you sure you know how to drive this thing?" Looking at Thor pressing buttons on the spaceship's control panel in confusion, Loki turned on his mocking mode again. "I only said it wouldn't be difficult." Volstagg was fighting with the palace guards outside while Thor was still trying to figure out how to drive the spaceship away. "No matter what you're doing, you have to speed up." Loki came to Thor's side and reminded him in a friendly manner. There were more and more guards outside, and it was impossible for Volstagg to hold on for long by himself. "Shut up, Loki." Thor was still trying, but the spaceship still showed no signs of starting. Looking at the flustered Thor, Rog sighed helplessly. He began to regret accepting this commission. "You must have missed something." Loki continued to remind him. "I didn't, I pressed all the buttons on it." Thor explained impatiently. "Don't use so much force, press gently." Loki continued to suggest. "I'm already pressing gently, it doesn't work." Thor was getting more and more impatient, but it was unknown if his impatience was because of Loki's nagging or because of the increasing number of guards outside. "No, I can't stand these 2 brothers anymore. Both of you, get out of the way. I strongly suggest that spaceship driving be added to Asgard's royal education curriculum in the future, and it's a compulsory subject." Roger pushed away Saul, who was beside the bridge, with a serious look on his face. It was better to do it himself than rely on these 2 brothers. At least he passed the Chinese exam, which was known for its difficulty. Rog could not understand a single word of the Dark Elves' language, but this did not stop him from quickly operating the spaceship on the control panel. This was not the start button. This was not it either. This should be it. Rog did not have any experience in piloting a spaceship, but as a veteran standalone game player, how could he not have played flight simulation games? He was a rookie in action games. But when it came to simulation games, he was a true expert. Sims, flight simulation, racing simulation, he could complete any simulation game with the highest rating in the shortest time. This was his gaming talent. After a fierce operation, he successfully started the Dark Elf spaceship, and a holographic image with Dark Elves' language appeared around them. How is this possible? This human actually knows how to fly a spaceship, Dark Elves? A series of questions quickly flashed through Loki's mind. Roger had also used facts to prove what the talent of an experienced driver was. The blade-like flying ship began to soar into the sky, and the stone pillars in the Golden Palace were destroyed one by one. "There's one more pillar that hasn't been hit yet." Loki continued to use his poisonous tongue. "Shut up." There were few pedestrians on Mount Xiaoming, and there were often racers competing with each other. The road, SSS2s. The racer god of Mount Akina was now racing a spaceship. Don't blink, the racer god of Mount Akina's performance is about to begin. Although Loki and Thor did not know what the racer god of Mount Akina was, after seeing the crazy look on Rog's face, a dangerous thought emerged in their minds. Before they could react, Rog pushed the spaceship's power button to its limit. Whoosh! The Dark Elf spaceship flew out of the Golden Palace like a real blade and began to speed through Asgard. "Rog, why don't you let me drive? My piloting skills are better." After watching the spaceship fly past Asgard's buildings at a crazy speed, Thor came to Rog's side and said with a serious face. Rog did not answer Thor. He just looked at him as if he was joking. "Although you're the one who can fly, I have to say that his piloting skills are much better than yours." As long as he could hit Thor, Loki didn't mind praising Rog's piloting skills. However, His real thought at this time was that Thor and Rog's piloting skills were completely inferior to his. I'm the one who's really suitable to pilot a spaceship. Although Asgard was a feudal monarchy, their technology was not feudal at all. In fact, it was very advanced. Just as Thor was about to correct Loki's wrong idea, Asgard's anti-aircraft cannons aimed directly at their spaceship and fired without hesitation. Boom 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 boom, dense shells flew past the spaceship like a rainstorm, setting off explosions that were enough to destroy the spaceship. That's it? You want to shoot down my spaceship with these attacks? Aren't you looking down on me, an old driver from Earth? Since the speed could no longer be increased, it was naturally time to show off his skills. Rog's Sharingan quickly moved and constantly scanned the various buildings, shells, spaceships, and incoming shells in the holographic image. Although he had just started, he quickly grasped the performance limits of the Dark Elf spaceship and controlled the spaceship to make all kinds of fancy evasive maneuvers. As more and more Asgard spaceships followed behind, Rog's piloting became more and more frantic. The violent turns made Thor and others feel like they were on a magical roller coaster. Just as Rog was about to get rid of the spaceship behind them in one go, Jane, who had been silent, suddenly fell down weakly. Oh my God, is he dead? Loki deliberately pretended to be shocked. I'm fine, I'm just a little carsick. After that, Jane began to retch uncontrollably. Ugh. My fault. After feeling Thor's dissatisfied eyes behind him, Rog decisively chose to apologize. However, as soon as he apologized, the spaceship shook violently again. Was it hit? Rog thought that his distraction just now caused the spaceship to be hit, but he soon found out that he was thinking too much. Well done, you just cut off Grandpa Thor's head. Loki glanced back and said to Rog while holding back his laughter. The spaceship was not hit, but the blade-like hull of the spaceship slashed through the statue of Odin's father, King Bao-er, and cut off King Bao-er's head. I didn't want to distract you, it's just that your plan is really terrible. Stealing the Dark Elf spaceship, then flying it around Asgard, crashing into whatever it sees, and letting everyone discover us. This is simply too awesome. Thor, this really suits your style. Before Loki finished speaking, he was grabbed by Thor and thrown out of the spaceship. Chapter 203. What a straightforward way to throw. Although the spaceship below was piloted by the three warriors of Sengoku, this method of throwing could easily cause irreparable mental damage to Loki. But thinking about it, Loki should have long been used to the feeling of being thrown around. Rog, we should go too. Thor picked up Jane, who had fallen to the ground, and came to the open cabin door. You go first, I'll be right behind you. Looking back at Rog, Thor did not hesitate and jumped out of the cabin door. When Thor and Jane left the spaceship, Rog summoned a shadow clone. Piloting a spaceship was not something that could be done at any time, and he did not want to end his first spaceship piloting journey so hastily. After giving the pilot's seat to the shadow clone, he looked around the spaceship with some reluctance, then came to the cabin door and fell down with his back facing down. Hoo-hoo-hoo, as soon as he left the spaceship, there was a whistling sound in his ears, and the feeling of weightlessness quickly enveloped his whole body. However, this feeling of free fall did not last long before it stopped. The spaceship piloted by Fandral caught him, and he just happened to hit Loki, who had just climbed up. Although this height could not kill a frost giant like Loki, the feeling of being treated as a human sandbag was very unpleasant. Can't be angry, can't be angry, can't be angry, Loki reminded himself as he shook off Rog and stood up again. Now the one piloting the spaceship is the shadow clone, this should buy more time. That being said, the real purpose of leaving the shadow clone was to extend the spaceship piloting experience. Although there was no way to control it personally, after the shadow clone was removed, the corresponding memory would be fed back to the main body, which could be considered an alternative piloting experience. And he also hid one thing, which was that before the spaceship's energy was exhausted, the shadow clone would not stop flying the spaceship. So this is your plan, it's quite impressive. Now, Loki finally figured out all of Thor's plans. The dark elf spaceship was used to attract attention from the beginning, so the bigger the commotion, the better. Keep your promise and bring us to your secret passage. After gently putting Jane down, Thor turned to Loki and said. Loki shrugged and held the steering wheel at the end of the cabin. An excited smile appeared on his face. Finally, it's my turn to take the helm. Now, I'll show you what real driving skills are. Under Loki's control, the spaceship began to fly towards the distant mountain peak. The strong wake created a clear water mark on the surface of the water. The dark elf spaceship piloted by the shadow clone attracted most of the spaceships, but there was still one spaceship that discovered their tracks and chased after them. The guards did not seem to care that there were two princes on the spaceship in front of them. The two cannons at the bow of the spaceship continued to shoot out fire. Although Loki was quite arrogant at times, one thing was true. His spaceship piloting skills were quite good. Compared with Rog's crazy and rough maneuvering, Loki's evasive movements were undoubtedly more graceful. Loki dodged all the incoming cannonballs by using the flight method of constantly combining left and right arcs. Thor apparently also considered the current situation and turned back to call Fandral. Fandral. Without any unnecessary words, Fandral directly picked up the rope that had already been prepared and went straight to the edge of the spaceship. For Asgard. As soon as his voice fell, Fandral jumped out and used the rope to swing to the guard spaceship. A few seconds later, the guard spaceship stopped chasing. Without any pursuers, Loki controlled the spaceship to fly to a bare mountain peak without any trees. Near the top of the mountain, there was a cave not much bigger than the spaceship. Loki's goal at this time was to fly the spaceship directly into the cave. Loki? Thor asked Loki nervously. If it's that easy, then everyone can do it. Loki's face also became very serious, but after saying this, he gave Rog a look. What does this have to do with me? Are you crazy? The spaceship was getting faster and faster. Thor asked again, at the same time grabbing Jane who was lying down. Maybe. Loki held the rudder with both hands and made the final adjustments to the flight direction. Looking at the cave entrance getting closer and closer, Rog also silently prepared to flying Thunder God at any time. If Loki failed, he would immediately teleport back to the Shadow Clone side. In the end, no accidents happened and the spaceship flew smoothly into the cave. Except for slightly brushing the surrounding stone walls when they first entered the cave, no accidents happened. After entering the cave, Loki still had no intention of slowing down, or rather, there was no need to slow down now. Although they didn't know how Loki found this place, after entering here, the spaceship entered a natural teleportation channel, and the brilliant light instantly occupied all their vision. The spaceship only flew in this space channel for 5 or 6 seconds before flying back to the real world. Victory arrived. After having a close contact with the ground and then being bounced back into the air, Loki said with a satisfied expression. This was a dark world, and the whole world gave people an extremely oppressive feeling. The sky was gray, the earth was gray, and even the stones were as black as coal. In this doomsday-like world, there were also a large number of damaged man-made buildings. These buildings were scattered all over the place, adding to the aura of civilization's destruction. This is Svartalfheim, the former kingdom of the Dark Elves. But that was a long time ago. After my grandfather King Bauer defeated Malekith and took away the ether, this place became a barren land in the 9 realms. After settling the sleeping Jane, Thor came to Rog's side and explained silently. In order to prevent Malekith from continuing to harm the people of Asgard, Thor did not hesitate to disobey Odin's orders and brought Jane here. He wanted to solve the problem of Jane here and avenge his mother Freya. If I had that energy, how much could I do? Looking at the sleeping Jane, Loki suddenly said. You will be devoured. Thor immediately interrupted Loki's fantasy. Just when Rog thought they would discuss the next plan, the entangled brothers quarreled again. Their topic started from the short lifespan of humans, transitioned to Loki's ambition, and then to the dead Queen Freya. Just when Thor was about to punch Loki in the face, he stopped. She wouldn't want us brothers to fight. She's already used to it, Loki said with a little helplessness. Chapter 204. When the two brothers completed their unique emotional communication, Rog finally had the chance to discuss the next battle plan with them. First, let Malekith take out the ether particles from Jean's body, and then let Thor summon lightning to completely destroy the ether particles. Finally, they would deal with Malekith and the other dark elves to avenge the dead Queen Frigga. The plan was simple and seemed feasible. And with the help of Loki, a master of illusion, it should not be a problem to deceive Malekith. In the eyes of Thor and Loki, this plan was feasible. Even if something went wrong, they had enough ability to solve it. But Rog's view was just the opposite. If there were no accidents, Thor's plan was destined to fail. The reason was very simple, that was, the ether particles were the reality of the Infinity Stones. Infinity Stones were not so easy to destroy. To some extent, Infinity Stones were basically equivalent to the corresponding law. Without the same level of energy, or energy of the same attribute, wanting to destroy an Infinity Stone was tantamount to a fool's dream. Well, I don't want to undermine your confidence, but I don't think things will be that simple. Thor, your lightning is indeed very powerful, but if you want to destroy the ether particles, it may not be enough. So I suggest, in addition to your plan, add a backup plan. If Thor successfully destroys the ether particles, then naturally, everyone will be happy, but if he fails, I hope it can be done according to my own way. Rog did not directly oppose Thor's plan, because even according to his own plan, he needed Malekith to take out the ether particles from Jean's body. The only difference between the two plans was who would deal with Malekith first. No problem, as long as you can deal with Malekith, I don't mind giving him to you. Thor did not oppose Rog's proposal. As the only person present who had briefly fought with Malekith, he was very clear about Malekith's strength. Although Malekith had thin arms and legs, when it came to fighting, he was also a powerful opponent. After making a simple plan, Loki steered the spaceship toward Malekith's flagship. The Dark Elves' flagship was a Dark Elven spaceship that had been magnified 10 to 20 times. The hull of the Dark Elven spaceship was like a gigantic sword stuck into the plains. Malekith led a small group of soldiers out of the main ship, while Rog and the others looked down at them from a small hill not far from the main ship. Good luck. After he finished speaking, Rog summoned the fourth Hokage's white Haori out of thin air. You need to change clothes before fighting? Loki said with a hint of sarcasm. You don't understand. This shirt has its own halo. Rog ignored Loki's mockery and took out several Thor kunais and threw them in different directions. When he finished throwing the Thor kunais in his hand, Thor and Loki also began their performance. Loki stabbed Thor with a dagger and pushed Thor down the hill. Then, in front of Malekith, he cut off Thor's right hand that he used to summon Thor's hammer. As expected, Malekith took out the ether particles from Jane's body. At this time, Thor returned to his original appearance and used Thor's hammer to summon a powerful lightning bolt, which directly struck the ether particles floating in the air. Boom! The ether particles that were hit by the silver lightning suddenly exploded, turning into solid rubies that fell around. Did it work? After seeing this scene, Thor and Loki could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. But they soon found that they had thought too much. The ether particles that had become solid floated in the air again, and in the blink of an eye, they returned to their original liquid state and quickly poured into Malekith's body. Sure enough, the scene in his memory still happened. Thor's plan failed, and Malekith succeeded in retrieving the ether particles. If no one else intervened, Malekith would have driven the main ship to London, just like in his memory. Then, using the convergence of celestial bodies and the ether particles that occurred once in thousands of years, the universe would return to the Dark Age. However, Rog did not intend to let things develop according to the original script. He would deal with Malekith here, complete Thor's commission, and get the 250 ninja coins. Flying Thor. Rog disappeared from the hillside and instantly appeared beside Thor. Thor and Loki both had the Flying Thor technique left by him, and Thor and Loki also knew this. He flashed to Thor's side without any hesitation and used the lightning body blink again. Odama Rasengan. Just as the Odama Rasengan in his hand was about to hit the motionless Malekith, a tall figure suddenly appeared and used his body to resist the Odama Rasengan in his hand. Cursed Warrior. This was the strongest cursed warrior among the Dark Elves. The Odama Rasengan, which could even send Hulk flying, was blocked by the cursed warrior. The strong twisting and tearing force did not send the cursed warrior flying, and it did not even leave him with much injury. The strengthening of this physique was a little too excessive. Rog did not continue to maintain the Odama Rasengan, because in this short 1 or 2 seconds, Malekith opened his eyes again, and the other Dark Elves also aimed their energy guns at him. Flying Thor. Without any hesitation, he directly Flying Thunder God left the place. He had no interest in using his body to take the damage of the energy guns. After teleporting to a teleportation point that had already been prepared, a large number of visible light blue chakra and silver-white lightning immediately emerged from his body. Lightning Release Chakra Mode. The moment Rog entered the Lightning Release Chakra mode, Thor also launched an attack at Malekith. Just like Rog, Thor's lightning attack was blocked by the Cursed Warrior in front of Malekith. He did not know how the Cursed Warrior's constitution was created. After blocking Rog's Odama Rasengan and Thor's lightning, the Cursed Warrior still looked lively. Except for some cracks in the armor on his body, he looked no different from before. What was even more shocking was that after blocking Thor's lightning attack, the Cursed Warrior ran in front of Thor and directly engaged in hand-to-hand combat with Thor. The Cursed Warrior tangled with Thor, and Loki was used as a target by the other Dark Elves. Energy bullets were constantly flying toward him. What was more troublesome was that Loki had to protect Jane's safety. "I'll take her away." As soon as Rog's voice sounded, Loki found that Jane, who was in his arms, had disappeared. After bringing Jane back to the previous hillside, Rog's figure disappeared again. Flying Thor. Lightning Blink. Rog, who had entered the Lightning Release Chakra mode, once again appeared in front of Malekith. The Tachi in his right hand made of lightning directly slashed at Malekith's neck. Lightning Sword Slash. Chapter 205. The thunder katana made of lightning struck at Malekith's neck at an unimaginable speed. As long as it hit, even if Malekith had ether particles in his body, he would not be able to avoid the end of being beheaded. Before swinging the katana, Rog was even prepared to take Malekith's attack head-on. That's it. The speed of the thunder katana exceeded the limit of what the naked eye could capture. Everyone, including Malekith, could only see a silver-white arc passing by in an instant. However, this perfect attack arc stopped in front of Malekith's neck, stopping only a few centimeters away from Malekith's neck. That's impossible. As the attacker, Rog was the first to notice that something was wrong. The thunder katana disappeared. No, it didn't disappear. The thunder katana made of lightning changed shape in a short moment, turning into a breeze without any offensive ability. Rog hadn't figured out what was going on, when the ether particles from Malekith's body hit him fiercely, sending him flying. Boom! After smashing several boulders in succession, Rog finally got rid of the terrible impact of the ether particles and stabilized his body. Only now did he have time to look at his right hand that was holding the katana. The silver-white thunder katana had disappeared without a trace. Everything happened in a short moment, and he didn't even have the chance to feel how the thunder katana disappeared. Was this the power of the gem of reality? Before the thunder katana disappeared, he saw the flash of red light in Malekith's eyes. If it weren't for the Sharingan's terrifying dynamic vision, he wouldn't even notice the appearance of the red light. The strange scene just now was definitely not something that Malekith could do by himself. If he had such power, the Dark Elves would never have fallen to this point. Only the gem of reality could make the thunder katana disappear in an instant, and only the gem of reality had the ability to change reality in an instant. Now, he finally understood why the system gave Malekith a commission reward of up to 250 ninja coins. He originally thought that the reward given by the system this time was too high. But now, it seemed that this reward was not high at all. In fact, it was seriously low. Although the scene just now didn't even last a second, it proved an incomparably important thing. Malekith was no longer the guy in his memory who could only use ether particles as energy shock waves. He could unleash the true power of ether particles, the power that could easily modify reality. In front of this power, all laws of nature and science were useless. There was no longer any boundary between reality and illusion. This was the true power of the reality gem, enough to change the world. How could this be Thor's personal challenge dungeon? This was practically Asgard's world dungeon. Moreover, it was of the highest difficulty. Being able to release the energy of the Infinity Stone and being able to use the power of the Infinity Stone are two completely different things. If it was just releasing energy, even Loki, who was being chased around by the Dark Elf warriors, could do it. With that level of Loki, Rog was sure to win even if he let him use his hands and feet. But if Loki could really use the power of the Mind Gem, even if Rog risked his life, he might not be his opponent. The gap between being able to use it and being able to use it was so big that it made people desperate. This was troublesome, really troublesome. It felt like he originally planned to find a guard with a spear in Asgard's Golden Palace to practice, and then found that the person with the spear was Odin. What was even more troublesome was that Rog found that all the offensive means he was currently good at could not withstand the ability of the ether particles to change reality. Whether it was thunder release or wood release, they would all be changed at the moment of attack. Or become a breeze, or become bubbles, or become air. Not far away, Thor, who was fighting with the cursed warrior, seemed to have noticed the situation on Rog's side. After sending the cursed warrior flying for a short time, he immediately flew to Rog's side. What's wrong? Malekith is more troublesome than we thought. He can change reality. After hearing the words, change reality, Thor's expression turned as ugly as Rog's. As the heir to Asgard's throne, it was impossible for him not to know what this meant. Then what do we do now? Retreat directly? In the face of such an unreasonable enemy, retreating was not an unacceptable thing. Retreat first to preserve their strength, and after finding a suitable way, they would deal with the enemy. This was also a relatively common and very reasonable operation. Of course we can retreat, but if we retreat, the next battle may be on Earth or Asgard. As soon as Rog finished speaking, the liquid-like ether particles arrived in front of him and Thor. Boom! Dodging the collision attack of the ether particles was not very difficult. The difficult part was how to resist the ether particles' ability to change reality. As soon as Rog and Thor dodged the first wave of the ether particles, the second wave of attacks followed closely behind, not giving them a chance to breathe. The ether particles attacked the two of them one after another, but one of them could fly, and the other could fly, so it was easy for them to dodge. While dodging the ether particle attack, an idea suddenly came to Rog's mind. Why not let this guy go to Earth? Anyway, there were so many big shots on Earth. He couldn't deal with the ether particles' ability to change reality, but there were always big shots who could. For example, Ancient One, who controlled the Time Stone. However, this idea only appeared for a few seconds before it was thrown to the back of his mind. Running away with his tail between his legs was not in line with his style at all. Especially when he was still wearing the white Haori of the fourth Hokage. Bearing the name of Hokage, I can't lose. An inexplicable fire surged from his heart. Isn't it just ether particles? Fight. The plan remains unchanged. Leave Malekith to me, and you and Loki deal with the others. As soon as his voice fell, he put his hands together, and the chakra in his body began to change. Red arc-shaped eyeshadow appeared around the Sharingan, forming an inexplicable match with the blood-red Sharingan. A red circle also appeared on his forehead, and the Sannin body inherited from Hashirama also received a terrifying increase at this moment. Facing Malekith, an enemy who controlled ether particles, he had to use his strongest form to protect his name as the fourth Hokage. Shikatsu Forest Sage Mode, activate. Chapter 206. For the so-called title of Yondaime Hokage, he was willing to risk his life against an enemy who had lived for thousands of years and controlled ether particles. In the eyes of many people, this may not be a wise choice. Even Thor, who was more familiar with Rog, would think that his decision was a bit reckless. But in Rog's own view, this was a necessary battle, a battle worthy of him going all out and even risking his life for a chance to win. Since he crossed into this world, he has been living a relatively smooth life. Even if he encounters an enemy that he can't deal with in a short time, he can rely on the system to become stronger little by little, and then defeat the opponent with strength that surpasses the opponent. He has fought too many battles where the strong defeated the weak. But he has never experienced a battle where the weak defeated the strong. But now, there is such an opportunity in front of him. He can choose to retreat and let the stronger Odin and the Ancient Ones solve the problem of Malekith. But he has learned ninjutsu for so long and completed so many commissions, not to safely retreat when encountering an enemy that he can't deal with. Whether it was Chinibu or Brainless, this time, he was not going to back down. Not to protect the world, let alone to complete the commission. This battle, he will only fight for himself. After he entered Sage mode, everyone present sensed the change in him. An indescribable aura quickly enveloped the entire plains. Among them, the one who felt it the most was Malekith, who had just fought with him. Malekith was not a weakling to begin with. After gaining control of the ether particles, his strength had increased by a terrifying amount. Although he didn't know what Rog had done, he was sure that the current Rog was completely different from before. Bang 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 bang, under Malekith's gaze, 8 identical shadow doppelgangers appeared around Rog. These 8 shadow doppelgangers did not attack Malekith immediately, but ran in different directions, forming a roughly circular encirclement. Malekith didn't care about the encirclement of the shadow doppelgangers. The power of ether particles was enough to make him invincible. In the face of absolute power, any tactics would be meaningless. Rog also ignored the departure of the shadow doppelgangers. Before summoning the shadow doppelgangers, he had already formulated the relevant tactics. Immortal method, wood release, wood puppet technique. Although he knew that ether particles could change reality in an instant, he still summoned Arhat the Wood. Arhat the Wood, dozens of meters high, jumped out of the ground, like a demon from the abyss, looking down at Malekith, who was wrapped in ether particles. As soon as Arhat the Wood appeared, he raised his huge right fist and attacked Malekith. Along with the wooden Arhat, there were 2 shadow clones on either side of Malekith. The huge wooden fist hit the ether particles in front of Malekith, and the terrifying force set off a shock wave that surpassed the speed of sound at the moment of impact. Before the shock wave could disperse, Malekith's body flashed with a red light, and Arhat the Wood was instantly disintegrated into square pieces of wood. The moment Arhat the Wood was transformed, the shockwave disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. Modifying reality. Malekith once again used ether particles to modify reality, instantly eliminating Arhat the Wood, who was a headache for most of his enemies. However, the moment Arhat the Wood was disintegrated, the 2 shadow doppelgangers also threw out the attacks they had prepared. Immortal method, illusion, dark sneaking technique. Immortal method, fixed body technique. Physical attacks were undoubtedly the easiest to modify, so Rog did not have much hope for Arhat the Wood from the beginning. The only purpose of the 10-meter-tall wooden Arhat was to attract Malekith's attention. Fixed body technique and dark sneaking technique were the first batch of ninjutsu and genjutsu that Rog had learned, and they were also skills that he often used to clean up small soldiers. But now, he let the shadow doppelgangers cast these 2 ninjutsu and genjutsu on Malekith. When dealing with ordinary people, fixed body technique could be called a control skill. But for an existence like Malekith, fixed body technique was basically a skill that could not be effective. Even if he used the immortal method, chakra, the result should not be much different. But Rog did not mind using a shadow doppelganger to try and see if there was a chance. If there was, then the next battle would undoubtedly be much simpler. Reality was cruel. Even if it was upgraded to immortal method, fixed body technique, it still did not have any effect on Malekith. The moment Malekith noticed something strange, he waved his hand, and 2 ether particles attacked the 2 shadow doppelgangers. Compared with the fixed body technique, dark sneaking technique was obviously more effective. As soon as Malekith raised his right hand, he found that his vision suddenly turned black, as if the light of the whole world had disappeared. Although he was deprived of his vision, Malekith did not show any signs of panic. Darkness, for other creatures, meant danger. But for the Dark Elves, darkness was their best helper. Malekith did not even use the ether particles to modify the reality of his vision deprivation, but let the dark sneaking technique take effect on him. Although Rog's ability was slightly beyond his expectations, he still did not take it seriously. If his judgment was not wrong, the effect of the visual deprivation could only last for a short 1 or 2 seconds at most. He could afford to wait for 1 or 2 seconds. Bang! Bang! Two sounds that were not loud but clear enough sounded, and the existence of the two shadow doppelgangers disappeared from Malekith's perception range. You dare to attack me with such weak doppelgangers? You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. A look of disdain appeared on Malekith's face. However, at this time, the danger instinct in his body began to frantically warn him. Immortal method, water release, water iron cannon technique. Immortal method, lightning release, spiral electromagnetic gun. At this time, Malekith still had not recovered his vision. For the sake of safety, he once again used the ether particle's ability to modify reality. Although he did not know what kind of attack Rog had launched, as long as all the attacks around him disappeared, it would be fine. Malekith's body flashed red again, and the liquid bullets and the spiral shells wrapped in lightning instantly disappeared without a trace. After modifying reality again, Malekith finally recovered his vision that had been deprived by the dark sneaking technique. However, when he regained his vision, he saw a scene that was completely unimaginable. It was Rog. Hundreds of Rogs appeared in his field of vision. An astonishing number of Rogs appeared in almost every area of the plain. The ones closer to him were only less than 10 meters away, and the ones farther away were hundreds of meters or even a kilometer away. Whether it was the fixed body technique or the dark sneaking technique, they were just a small part of the plan. Just like the wooden Arhut, Rog never expected these two ninjutsu and genjutsu to cause any harm to Malekith. What he wanted was just a little bit of time, and to force Malekith to modify reality. Since he was playing with his life, how could 8 shadow doppelgangers be enough? Chapter 207. It was the first time in Rog's life that he had created so many shadow clones at once. If not for Second Last's chakra and the sage body, he would not have dared to try such a dangerous method. Apart from the main body, all the shadow clones only had enough chakra to release 2 or 3 ninjutsu. In order to prevent a large number of shadow clones from disappearing at the same time, he deliberately made the shadow clones appear in different positions to avoid being caught in one fell swoop. After creating so many shadow clones, Rog also let the shadow clones help Loki deal with the dark elf warriors who were besieging him, and then brought him to Jane. Just watch from here. If you still want to compete with the main body after watching, you can choose the time and place. After bringing Loki to the small hill where Jane was, the shadow clones left again with the flying thunder god, leaving behind a displeased Loki. This guy is really looking down on me more and more. Although he thought so, Loki really did not dare to do anything to Rog now. He could only complain silently in his heart. As for the battle between Thor and the cursed warriors, Rog did not let the shadow clones intervene. Instead, he directly let Thor handle it. Although the cursed warriors were a little difficult to deal with, as long as Thor was serious, the final winner would definitely be him. Malekith did not expect that Rog would create such a big scene when he was only deprived of his vision for 1 or 2 seconds. What was more troublesome was that he could not tell which was Rog's main body now. After a short fight just now, Malekith could already be sure that the shadow clones did not have a strong ability to resist attacks. As long as they were hit, even if they were hit by a strong attack, the shadow clones would turn into smoke and disappear. Therefore, even if there were a little more shadow clones now, he did not take it too seriously. No matter how many there were, they had to be able to hit him first. Malekith took a deep breath, and a strange red light began to envelop his body. The fluid ether particles also wrapped around him like a whirlwind. "Since you want to play, then I'll play with you." Malekith did not stand still and wait for Rog to attack like before. Instead, he took the initiative to attack the shadow doppelganger. The king of dark elves was going all out. In the face of Malekith's attack, the shadow clone did not have any intention of retreating or dodging. It also attacked Malekith. At the same time, one ninjutsu was released by the shadow clone. Immortal Technique, Lightning Palm, Immortal Technique, Thousand Birds, Immortal Technique, Thousand Birds Sharp Spear, Sage Art, Rasengan, Sage Art, Odama Rasengan, Sage Art, Great Forest Jutsu. Every shadow clone that attacked Malekith used ninjutsu, while the second echelon of shadow clones all used genjutsu. These genjutsu may be the Dark Walk Jutsu that just took effect, or it may be the Sharingan genjutsu developed by Rog himself. The shadow clones of the second echelon did not care whether these illusions would work or not. Anyway, their goal was to throw all the illusions at Malekith. With the ether particles, the possibility of these ninjutsu and genjutsu hitting Malekith was not high. Even if any of the shadow clones' attacks broke through the outermost layer of ether particles, Malekith would modify reality in time and turn all the attacks into nothingness. Turning ninjutsu into nothingness, turning shadow clones into nothingness. With the ability of ether particles to modify reality, Malekith consumed the number of shadow clones at a terrifying speed. 20, 50, 100, 150. The disappearing shadow clones constantly fed back memories and feelings to the main body, and a large amount of information quickly filled his mind, crazily squeezing the mental endurance of the main body. Rog himself did not participate in the attack, but sat on a hillside 1 kilometer away from Malekith with his eyes closed. Chakra perception was at the limit at this time, and sweat constantly appeared on his forehead. The position of the shadow clone, the position of the attack, the time of disappearance, the distance of movement, the time of attack. Through chakra perception, he could clearly feel everything that was happening on the battlefield. Combined with the information fed back by the shadow clones, a completely digitized model of the battlefield appeared in his mind. As the shadow clones continued to attack and disappear, he obtained more and more information, and Malekith's combat model became clearer and clearer. The ether particles' attack speed, movement speed, impact force, Malekith's own movement speed, attack habits, degree of agility, the number of times the ether particles could modify reality, the range of its effects, the effective time, and other information were constantly being obtained. The ether particles' ability was indeed very strong. If there was a sufficient supply of energy, the ether particles could even extend the scope of modifying reality to the entire universe. But this was the ability of the ether particles, not Malekith's ability. Malekith's own strength was also very good, but after all, he was not the ether particles themselves, and there was a limit to his power. What Rog needed to do now was to let Malekith reach that limit as soon as possible and squeeze out all of Malekith's power. Can't you control the ether particles to modify reality? Don't you want to use the ether particles to return the entire universe to the Dark Ages? Then I'd like to see if you, who have no power, can still control the ether particles, and if you can still fulfill your dream of changing the universe. As time passed, Malekith also noticed that something was wrong and saw Rog's real purpose clearly. But he could not stop his attacks. Even if he stopped attacking, the shadow clones would not give up attacking. Rog made it clear that he wanted to use the shadow clones to consume his power. This was not a conspiracy, but an open and above-board scheme. This was a gamble that used one's own strength as a bargaining chip. If you want to win, sure, but only if you have the strength. Rog indeed could not deal with the ether particle's ability to modify reality, but he could deal with the person who made use of this bug. Lightning and flames kept appearing, wooden golems and wooden dragons took turns to attack, liquid bullets and electromagnetic cannonballs came one after another, light blue Rasengan and light gold chakra chains kept appearing endlessly. Some of the shadow clones even directly used Chidori and Thundercloak to protect themselves and rushed straight toward Malekith. The body flicker and thunder body flicker allowed the shadow clones to appear in all directions like ghosts. The combination of flying Thor's second stage and body substitution also made these shadow clones as slippery as loaches and difficult to lock onto. After the initial large number of casualties, the remaining shadow clones became more and more cunning and difficult to deal with. The red light on Malekith's body also changed from appearing once in a while to lasting for a long time. The reality of being attacked was constantly modified and dissolved. Chapter 208. The battle between Rog and Malekith was still going on. Loki, who was watching from the side, was playing with the dagger in his hand out of boredom. In the beginning, he was still surprised by the strength displayed by Rog. But as time passed, his emotions gradually transitioned from surprise to calmness, and then from calmness to boredom. Not to mention those dazzling lightning bolts and flames. He had seen Wood Arhut and Wood Dragon dozens of times. Wood Arhut appeared, then Wood Arhut disappeared. Wood Dragon appeared, then Wood Dragon disappeared. Rog and Malekith seemed to be working together to put on a magnificent play, constantly repeating the two scenes of appearing and disappearing. The battle between Rog and Malekith fell into a short stalemate, while the battle between Thor and the cursed warrior came to an end. You give me a hammer, I give you a punch. You give me a lightning bolt, I give you a black hole grenade. At this time, they were both trying to find an opportunity to end the battle, and their fighting style was becoming more and more violent. Rog could sense the battle between Thor and the cursed warrior, but he did not pay attention to it at all. He did not even plan to send a shadow clone to help. Under the constant attacks of hundreds and thousands of shadow clones, Malekith was forced to the point where he had no choice but to passively modify reality. For him and Malekith, whoever could not hold on first would be the ultimate loser of this battle. Relying on the defense of the ether particles and the ability to modify reality, Malekith did not let any of the attacks hit him. But constantly using the ether particles to modify reality was also rapidly consuming his strength. Although the ether particles were not as powerful as the power gem, it was still quite a burden to use. Especially when using the ether particles to modify reality, the terrifying consumption could even directly drain a Dark Elf warrior or an Asgard warrior. Malekith could not remember how many times he had used the ether particles to modify reality, nor how many shadow clones he had destroyed. The only thought in his mind now was to find Rog's original body as soon as possible, and then use the ether to directly erase this extremely annoying earthling. Malekith was very uncomfortable now, and Rog was not any better. Every shadow clone that disappeared would give him a piece of memory and experience. Although the feedback wasn't 100% real, it was still an inhuman feeling when so many of them were stacked together. If it wasn't for his mental endurance, he wouldn't have been able to endure the pain and would have dispelled the remaining shadow clones. Rog finally understood why Naruto was the only one who dared to use shadow clone jutsu in battle. In addition to Naruto's excessive amount of chakra, another important reason is that only he has this unparalleled extraordinary endurance to withstand the pain feedback from the shadow clone jutsu. While enduring this inhuman pain, Rog had to constantly organize the information in his mind and establish a combat model belonging to Malekith. Using the ether particles to modify reality will bring a huge burden, but it doesn't take much effort to drive the ether particles for physical attacks and defense. So even if the shadow clone jutsu consumed most of Malekith's strength, making him unable to continue to use the ether particles to modify reality, the defense circle built by the ether particles was still a problem he had to face. But this problem was not very serious. At least compared with the abnormal ability to modify reality, the defense and attack of the ether particles themselves were in an acceptable range. And after collecting a lot of data on the attack and speed of the ether particles through the shadow clone jutsu, Rog was confident that he could end the battle in an instant after Malekith lost the ability to modify reality. Compared with Rog, who was gradually taking the initiative, Malekith's current situation was obviously much worse. In the face of Rog's open conspiracy, he had no choice but to retreat, nor did he have any reinforcements. The Dark Elf warriors had been dealt with by the Shadow Clone Jutsu long ago, and his strongest subordinates, the Cursed Warriors, were also entangled with Thor. In order to resist the Shadow Clone Jutsu's storm-like attacks, he could only choose to modify reality again and again, consuming his dwindling strength again and again. No, I can't go on like this. The longer this drags on, the worse the situation will be. Malekiz's brain began to work frantically, thinking of all the ways that could help him get out of the current situation. He could not count on his subordinates, and there was no environment around him that could be used. On the vast plains, there were only stones and sand, and there was nothing that could help at all. Celestial convergence. He could use the celestial convergence. When the celestial convergence connected the 9 realms together, the power of the ether particles would increase exponentially every time they connected to a country. If they could connect to the 9 realms, the power of the ether particles would be enough to affect the entire universe. At that time, not to mention Rog, even if Odin was present, he would not be able to stop the universe from returning to the Dark Age. Malekiz quickly remembered his original plan, and then he immediately discovered the problem. The celestial convergence would only last for a short period of time. He had to release the ether particles in the right place at the right time to connect to the 9 realms. Although Svartalfheim was also one of the 9 realms, it was not the connection point of the celestial convergence, and now was not the time for the celestial convergence. There were still at least several hours before the celestial convergence. He could not hold on for so long under Rog's attack, and Rog would never give him so much time. The time was not right, and the place was not right. Even if the ether particles could change reality, it was impossible to advance the time of the celestial convergence. Unless he collected all 6 infinity stones. Wait, although my strength is not enough to advance the time of the celestial convergence, I can create an environment similar to the celestial convergence. Just creating a similar environment, this degree of change in reality was completely within his acceptable range. Malekith finally found the straw that belonged to him. Earthling, you've lost. Without any hesitation, Malekith stimulated the remaining energy in his body and began to use the ether particles to modify reality. The convergence of the 2 countries of Svartalfheim and Earth was enough to increase the power of the ether particles to a terrifying degree. A dazzling red light that was far more dazzling than before erupted from Malekiz's body, and the strange dark red color instantly occupied everyone's vision, as if the whole world was only left with the dark red light in front of them. This dark red light only lasted for a short moment before dissipating. When the real color returned, a circular portal with a diameter of several kilometers appeared in the air. No, this was not a portal, this was a space connection point created when the 2 countries converged. Rog recognized the city on the other side of the space, London, England. Chapter 209. Looking up at London on the other side of the space, Rog suddenly laughed, a little happy and a little surprised. Malekith's operation was indeed beyond his expectations. He never thought that Malekith would use ether particles to forcefully modify reality and create a celestial convergence phenomenon that only belonged to Svartalfheim and Earth. You're really a genius. Rog had thought that the battle between him and Malekith would continue for a while. But now, it seemed that it would not be long before this battle came to an end. When the celestial convergence phenomenon between Svartalfheim and Earth occurred, Malekith could clearly feel the changes in the ether particles. Under the influence of the celestial convergence, the ether particles became extremely active. Under Malekith's control, the liquid ether particles stretched out like dark red tentacles toward the space channel in the air. As long as the ether particles were connected to Earth through the space channel, the power of the ether particles would increase exponentially. The celestial convergence would not last long, but even if it was only for a few seconds, it would be enough for him to completely eliminate Rog. Rog did not stop Malekith's plan to use the ether particles to connect the 2 countries. He even asked the shadow clones to stop attacking so that Malekith could have an undisturbed environment. The moment the shadow clones stopped attacking, Malekith sensed that something was wrong. But he did not think too much about it. Instead, he controlled the ether particles to surge toward London. Rog took the initiative to remove most of the shadow clones, leaving only the 4 closest to Thor, Loki, and the others. Then, under his signal, 3 shadow clones took away Thor, Loki, and the other 2. As for the cursed warriors, they were stopped by the last shadow clone. When the shadow clones took Thor and the others away from the plains, Rog did not stay idle. He used Thunder Body Blink and quickly left the plains. Malekith sensed that Rog and the others had left. In his opinion, this was just Rog's final struggle. No matter where Rog escaped to, even if he ran to the other side of Svartalfheim, the terrifyingly strengthened ether particles could directly erase the reality of his existence. Although the ether particles that only connected Svartalfheim and Earth could not extend their power to the entire universe like they did when they connected the 9 kingdoms. However, there was no problem in expanding the scope of reality modification to the entire Svartalfheim. No matter how fast Rog retreated, it was impossible for him to leave Svartalfheim in such a short time. In other words, when the ether particles officially connected to Earth through the spatial channel, it would be the moment of Rog's death. However, Malekith soon discovered that Rog was not as crazy as he had imagined. After expanding the distance between the two to about 3 kilometers, Rog stopped. The shadow clones stopped as well. "Rog, what's going on?" Thor asked Rog with a look of displeasure. Seeing that the battle between him and the cursed warrior was about to end, Rog's shadow clone suddenly appeared in front of him, then picked him up and ran away without saying a word. "It's nothing, I just don't want you to be affected by the inexplicable power." At this distance, he could no longer see Malekith's appearance, but he could still see the ether particles flying towards the spatial channel. "Aren't you going to stop Malekith? Once the ether particles connect to Earth, no one will be able to stop Malekith." Thor's understanding of the ether particles was no less than Rog's. He was also very clear about the consequences of the ether particles connecting to Earth. "Don't worry, Malekith doesn't need us to stop him," Rog said with a calm face. If it weren't for the fact that his wild laughter did not match his Haori, he would have laughed like the 4 Uchihas laughing brothers. Although they were not very relieved with Rog's answer, at this time, they had no way to break through the 3 kilometers in an instant. They could only watch the tentacle-like ether particles pass through the spatial channel and go to the sky above London. When the ether particles were successfully connected to Earth, Malekith felt a powerful force that he had never felt before. This force was beyond his imagination, and it gave him a strange feeling of omnipotence. If he wanted, he could even turn Svartalfheim into Asgard in an instant. It was not until now that Malekith finally realized how powerful the ether particles were. This was a power comparable to the gods of the universe, and this was the law of the universe that could not be resisted. After trying to calm down, a cruel smile appeared on Malekith's face. He did not want to erase Rog in an instant. He wanted to let Rog feel extreme pain, and then take away his life bit by bit. "Little Earthling, repent. Repent for being my enemy, repent for being the enemy of the ether particles, repent for being the enemy of the dark elves." The image of Rog wearing a Haori appeared in Malekith's mind. He slowly raised his right hand and put his middle finger and thumb together. Snap! Without any hesitation, Malekith snapped his fingers confidently. With the snap of his fingers, the ether particles in his body also shone with a dark red light. Then, nothing happened. What was going on? Why didn't the ether particles' ability to change reality take effect? Why didn't that annoying Earthling turn into a slave of pain and come to me? The proud look on Malekith's face was quickly replaced by doubt. Unwilling to give up, he snapped his fingers a few more times and continued to urge the ether particles. But the result was no different. Rog, who was 3 kilometers away, did not suffer any changes. The ether particles seemed to have completely lost the ability to change reality. This was impossible. This was absolutely impossible. How could the ether particles fail? This was an infinity stone that was born with the universe. Malekith's mind was full of doubts. At this time, he finally remembered a reality that he had ignored. Why did the 9 great nations have such a cosmic wonder as the convergence of celestial bodies? It was not because the 9 great nations had not met for a long time, so everyone made an appointment to form a straight line and say hello to each other. This was a natural phenomenon caused by the mutual influence of the 9 great nations. This was the same as the moon revolving around the earth and the earth revolving around the sun. It was a natural law caused by the mutual influence of the 3 planets. Malekith used the ether particles to forcefully change reality and create a space channel between Svartalfheim and the Earth that would only be created when the celestial bodies of the 9 great nations converged. His behavior was like pushing the first domino, causing a series of complex and powerful chain reactions between the 9 great nations. Rog did not need to stop Malekith, because the 9 great nations would tell Malekith what it meant to not offend the heavens. Chapter 210. You did not modify the reality of Svartalfheim and Earth. You are fighting against the 9 great worlds with your own strength. If possible, Rog would like to say this to Malekith. However, judging from the current situation, Malekith would have to deal with the backlash from the 9 great worlds before he had the chance to hear this. Malekith, who realized something, slowly raised his head and looked at the space channel in the sky that connected Svartalfheim and Earth. Then, he swallowed uncontrollably. The originally circular space channel was constantly changing shape, and the ether particles that had entered the sky above London were forcibly expelled by an invisible force. Cracks that looked like glass appeared in the stable space channel. Through these cracks, one could see the black hole that was as deep as ink. Space was compressed, gravity changed, and the power of the 9 great worlds began to forcibly repair the reality that had been modified by the ether particles. As the cause of all this, Malekith felt the endless erosion of energy from all directions. With Malekith as the center, the reality around him began to shatter. The liquid-like ether particles were also rapidly compressed by this powerful and irresistible force. They were directly compressed from an illusory liquid state into a red gem the size of a finger. When the ether particles were forcibly compressed and condensed, Malekith was horrified to find that he had completely lost his connection with the ether particles. The ether particles returned to their original gem form, emitting a red light and floating quietly in front of Malekith. Although it was only a short distance of less than 10 centimeters, Malekith could not even reach out to touch the gem of reality. The extremely terrifying energy wrapped around him tightly like a cocoon, completely restricting all of his movements. As time passed, the cocoon made of energy continued to shrink in size, crazily squeezing Malekith inside. Chaos, fury, destruction, death, energies of various natures were like locusts constantly nibbling away at Malekith's body, making him, who was already in unbearable pain, feel even more extreme pain. At this time, Malekith finally understood why Rog had directly left the plains and why he had allowed him to control the ether particles to connect to Earth. This Earthling had expected this and had deliberately waited for all of this to happen. Malekith felt that he had finally guessed Rog's plan. He laughed wildly with a voice mixed with pain. However, Malekith did not expect that this was not Rog's plan at all. Even Rog himself did not expect that Malekith would choose to use the method of connecting to Earth to solve the problem. According to his plan, Malekith would lose the ability to change reality under the constant pressure of the shadow clone. Once most of Malekith's power had been consumed by the shadow doppelganger, the main body would appear and use the most proficient instant-killing method to directly end Malekith's life. However, Malekith's godly maneuver had disrupted his plan, making his previous act of collecting information seem redundant. Rog could only hope that Malekith would be able to withstand the backlash of the 9 realms so that he could make use of the information he had previously collected. The reality modified by Malekith was quickly corrected, and the space channel quickly disappeared under the influence of the 9 realms. Although the space channel had disappeared, the energy on Malekith's body showed no signs of dissipating at all. And with the passage of time, this energy became more and more abundant. The celestial convergence of the 9 realms would break the boundaries of each country, which also meant that the power of each country could be transmitted to other countries. Fortunately, it was not the time for the celestial convergence to happen. Otherwise, under the combined suppression of the 9 realms, Malekith would have been directly crushed into a meat paste or eroded into an atomic state by the energy. But even so, Malekith was now on the verge of death. If this chaotic energy did not dissipate, he would undoubtedly bid farewell to this world. At this moment, a tall figure broke through the surrounding chaotic energy, resisted the erosion of the energy storm, and stepped in front of the immobile Malekith. The person who came was none other than Malekith's strongest subordinate, the Cursed Warrior. At the moment when the strange phenomenon occurred, the cursed warrior took advantage of the opportunity to kill Rog's shadow clone and quickly rushed to Malekith's location. But the chaotic and powerful energy storm prevented him from moving forward, so it was not until now that the cursed warrior had successfully arrived in front of Malekith. The cursed warrior, who could even resist Rog's Odama Rasengan and Thor's lightning, was now covered in blood, and the armor on his body had been eroded by the chaotic energy, completely losing its defensive power. After arriving in front of Malekith with difficulty, the cursed warrior silently glanced at the king he had served for thousands of years. Then he stretched out his right hand and grasped the gem of reality floating in front of Malekith. The cursed warrior was not Malekith. He had no experience in controlling the gem of reality, nor did he know how to use the power of the gem of reality. But he still had no intention of letting go. No experience, no matter. Not knowing how to use it, no matter. Although the cursed warrior could not use the gem of reality like Malekith, he had his own way of using it, a very expensive but very effective method. After holding the gem of reality in his right hand and patting his heart twice, the cursed warrior, who was already covered in blood, shone with a magma-like orange-red light. The dark elves were immortal. The cursed warrior let out the last roar of his life. The moment the roar ended, the cursed warrior exploded, and the gem of reality in his right hand shone with a dark red light again. Modify reality. The dark red light flashed, and the chaotic energy eroding Malekith suddenly disappeared, and the energy storm on the entire plane disappeared. The chaotic energy disappeared, the Dark Elves' flagship disappeared, and the cursed warrior also disappeared. Malekith knelt on the ground weakly, gasping for breath. The gem of reality floated quietly in the air. The gem of reality had once again modified reality, and the energy backlash brought by the 9 realms was over. It was over, everything was over. Malekith stood up again and looked at the gem of reality, which was less than a meter away from him. As long as he raised his hand, he could take the gem of reality into his hand at any time. However, he did not reach out his hand, and just stood there silently. Earthling, you win. As soon as Malekith's voice fell, Rog's figure appeared in front of him. Together with Rog, there was a thunder katana completely composed of lightning. Thunder katana slash. This time, the thunder katana slash did not miss, and it did not disappear. It drew a beautiful silver arc and directly slashed across Malekith's neck. At the end of the arc, the katana disappeared, and Malekith's head was separated from his body. Chapter 2:11. It started with the thunder sword draw and ended with the thunder sword draw. When Malekith's head flew into the air, the outcome of the battle between him and Log was finally decided. Although he defeated Malekith, Rog did not feel the thrill of defeating a strong enemy. The existence of the gem of reality made Malekith extremely difficult to deal with. But it was also because of the gem of reality that Malekith suffered from the energy backlash of the 9 realms, which eventually led to his defeat and death. Rog removed the thunder tachi in his right hand and turned to hold the floating gem of reality. His mood was as calm as water. Not long after, Thor and the other 2 came to Rog's side and looked at Malekith, who had completely lost his life, with a complicated expression. Just as Loki was about to say something, a gorgeous beam of light fell from the sky and landed directly near them. The teleportation beam of Bifrost. In the colorful beam of light, several Asgard warriors in golden armor walked out. His Majesty wants to see you. The Asgard warrior who walked in front said expressionlessly. Let's go. It's time for us to go back. Looking back at Malekith, who had completely lost his life, Thor took Jane and walked into the teleportation beam of Bifrost. Although there were still some loose ends that had not been dealt with, such as the Dark Elves' main ship that was still stuck in the plains. However, since Odin had sent people over, Rog and the others naturally did not need to deal with these loose ends personally. Through the Bifrost, Rog and the others quickly returned to Asgard, and then under the leadership of the palace guards, or rather under escort, they came to the more severely damaged Golden Palace Hall. The attack of the Dark Elves caused serious damage to the Golden Palace Hall, and Rog's crazy driving caused the Golden Palace Hall to suffer the most serious damage since its establishment. I told you still have a pillar that hasn't been destroyed. When passing by the only remaining stone pillar in the Golden Palace Hall, Loki turned his head and said to Rog, I know. I did it on purpose. Rog ignored Loki's complaints. He was now thinking about a very serious matter. Because of him, Loki did not fake his death as he remembered. This also meant that the scene of Odin being thrown to the New York nursing home by Loki might not happen again, and Odin might not die so quickly. Since Odin would not die so quickly, many things would not happen. For example, the reappearance of the death goddess Hela, the twilight of the gods brought by the flame giant Surtur, and the crazy titan who coveted the space gem for a long time. Just as Rog was seriously thinking about what the future would be like, Odin's slightly tired voice sounded. Log, give me the gem of reality in your hand. Rog didn't say anything and directly opened his right hand that was holding the reality gem. Just as he opened his palm, the reality gem flew towards Odin and landed in Odin's hand. Odin didn't explain anything. A few golden electric currents suddenly appeared in his hand, and the reality gem also shone with a dark red light. The dark red light quickly swept through every corner of the Golden Palace like a wave, and the severely damaged Golden Palace quickly returned to its original appearance. The Golden Palace returned to its original appearance, but Odin didn't stop what he was doing. With a wave of his hand, a cube that looked like a Rubik's Cube appeared in his hand. Then, under the gaze of Rog and the others, Odin put the reality gem into the cube, turning the originally white and flawless cube dark red. I did some sealing on the reality gem to reduce the difficulty and danger of using it, making it easier for you to control or use the power of the reality gem. The principle of the seal is the same as the Rubik's Cube, so if you like, you can call it the reality cube. After saying that, Odin threw the reality cube in his hand to Rog. Rog had just caught the reality cube thrown by Odin when he heard Odin's voice again. From now on, you are the guardian of the reality gem. Although Odin's voice revealed a trace of exhaustion, there was no hint of joking. However, after hearing his words, Rog, Thor, and Loki all showed an incredulous look. Isn't this decision a bit too casual? Among the three, Loki was obviously more excited than Rog and Thor. He even began to imagine how much he could do if he had the reality gem. Conquering Jotunheim, conquering Warnerheim, conquering the land, forget about Earth, conquering that primitive country doesn't make much sense. Thinking of this, Loki couldn't help but turn his head and look at Rog. Unlike Loki, who was already full of crazy ideas, after hearing Odin's words, the first thing that appeared in Rog's mind was not how powerful the reality gem is, but how troublesome the reality gem is. In this universe, there are many madmen who want to get the infinity gem. And among these madmen, there are many madmen with terrifying strength. Without enough strength, not to mention guarding the reality gem, they may not even be able to keep their own life. To put it nicely, the infinity gem is a universal treasure that contains powerful power. To put it bluntly, the infinity gem is a disaster collector, and it's the kind of disaster collector that has super powerful power and can cover the entire universe. After thinking about it seriously, in fact, after thinking for more than 10 seconds, Rog made a decision. He has no interest in being the reality gem guardian. However, he is still a little interested in the name of the reality gem controller. Isn't it just the crazy titan and some unknown universe-level enemies? Bring it on. After making the decision, he happily put away the reality Rubik's Cube in his hand. After handing over the reality Rubik's Cube to Rog, Odin left the Golden Palace Hall with the Gungnir, and his back looked a little lonely. Under the arrangement of Thor, Loki was locked back in his exclusive cell, and Rog returned to the room he lived in before. As for Jane, she was taken to his palace by Thor. As the future heir to the throne of Asgard, Thor has his own palace in the Golden Palace, which covers a large area and is luxurious enough. In the afternoon of the next day, Thor, who had disappeared for nearly 24 hours, finally appeared in front of Rog again. Malekith is dead, and according to the agreement, I will take you to Nidawyler. But before we set off, I need to explain to you first. There are not many dwarves living in Niederweiler, only about 300 people, and they are somewhat xenophobic and don't like people from other planets. The most important thing is, don't make fun of their height, they will go berserk. Chapter 212. Although he had some psychological preparation, when they came to Niederville, where the dwarves lived, Rog still had serious doubts about the dwarves. There are more than 300 dwarves living on the Niederville star ring. Among these dwarves, as long as they are adult dwarves, they are about twice his height. Even those underage dwarves are generally taller than him by a head. Earthling, do you want to make a suit of armor that suits you? Dwarf King Aitsue sat on a huge chair made entirely of metal and asked with his head down. Yes, I want a suit of armor that doesn't affect my speed and flexibility. The style of the armor can be roughly based on this. After that, Rog took out the sketch that he had drawn last night. Unlike the previous set of armor copied from Uchiha Madara, the armor sketch that Rog took out at this time is more modern. The overall shape of the armor is smoother and more fitting to the body curve. In this regard, Rog decisively borrowed some of the ideas of Tawny Mark series Iron Man armor. However, compared with Tawny's full coverage armor, the armor he designed can only be regarded as half coverage, and there are many fewer parts. In general, there are actually only 3 components. The main body composed of a chest protector, a waist protector, and a skirt, boots for the legs, and bracers for the arms. All the components will not be very thick, similar to the armor worn by Thor now. Although Rog will not wear a cloak like Thor, he intends to wear the Haori of Yondaime Hokage outside the armor. You can continue to improve your drawing skills, but I have a rough idea of what you want. After taking a look at the scroll handed by Rog, Dwarf King Aitsue immediately understood what kind of armor Rog wanted, and the specific building ideas quickly emerged in his mind. There is no problem in helping you build the armor, but you have to solve the materials yourself, do you understand? Understood. For Thor's sake, Dwarf King Ikwi didn't mind helping Rog make a set of armor. It wouldn't take much time anyway. But as for the materials, Rog could only solve it himself. Although Asgard had sent a lot of materials, they were all used for a specific purpose. Dwarf King Aitsue would not use Asgard's materials for Rog. As for the materials, I can only provide vibranium and URU metal. As for the others, if you need them, I can get them as soon as possible. Rog was not dissatisfied with Dwarf King Aitsue's request. It was already good enough that the other party was willing to forge the armor for him. He couldn't expect the other party to pay for the materials. For the time being, he couldn't bring himself to do such a thing. Under the gaze of Ai Chui and Thor, Rog took out a psychic scroll that he carried with him and channeled some of the vibranium and URU metal that he had collected before. Thank you Wakanda, thank you Asgard. When Rog channeled a pile of vibranium and URU metal, Dwarf King Aitsue's eyes were a little strange. Is this guy Odin's illegitimate son? Where did he get so much URU metal? Just the URU metal that Rog channeled now was more than the total amount in Niederweiler's warehouse. And Aitsue was sure that Rog had more URU metal than this. The URU metal that Rog channeled now was only about 1/3 of what he had. When Aseri's army was fighting in Warnerheim, most of the URU metal sent by Asgard went into his pocket. Now, it was time for these URU metal to play a role. The number is a bit wrong. A set of armor can't use so much URU metal and vibranium. With a casual glance, it could be seen that the amount that Rog channeled greatly exceeded the need for a set of armor. Yes, if the number of armor is calculated, here is about the amount of 10 sets of armor. As soon as Rog finished speaking, Dwarf King Aitsue's face became a little gloomy. Another greedy guy. The agreement was only 1 set, but he wants 10 sets. Earthling, your appetite is too big. After hearing Rog's words, Thor's face gradually became ugly. Asking Dwarf King Aitsue to personally create a set of armor, even for him, was not an easy task. The reason why Aitsue agreed to his request so easily was mostly because of Odin's face. Here are the materials needed for 10 sets of armor. Except for the original set, I am willing to give 5 sets of the remaining 9 sets of materials to Nidavel. As for the remaining 4 sets of materials, I hope King Aitsue can help me make a revolver. After that, Rog took out his other weapon design sketch. The style of the revolver on the sketch was very similar to the classic Colt Python, but it was larger and had not 1 barrel, but 2. This kind of weapon used by ordinary people doesn't use URU metal and vibranium at all. Tell me, what do you want? It was a revolver, and a gunpowder revolver at that. Let alone in Nidavel, even on Earth, this kind of thing is not considered a high-end weapon. I have no interest in gunpowder weapons, but I am still a little interested in firearms. I hope that this revolver can use the chakra on my body as the energy source and have the ability to fire ninjutsu bullets. Rog quickly explained to Aitsue what chakra and ninjutsu bullets are. Ninjutsu bullets, this is his own original term. To put it simply, some ninjutsu are prepared in advance and condensed into the shape of bullets, waiting for the needed time to fire it. This is purely a boring research he did before. But after seeing the dwarf king Aitsue, he suddenly had the intention to make this research into a finished product. It's not difficult to extract the chakra on your body as energy and then fire it in the form of bullets. But firing ninjutsu bullets, I can only conclude this after seeing your so-called ninjutsu bullets. Aitsue originally labeled Rog as greedy, but after hearing about chakra and ninjutsu bullets, he became interested in Rog again. I made a few bullets before, you can take a look. This is a Rasengan bullet, this is a Grand Flame Annihilation bullet, this is a Chidori bullet. Not all ninjutsu can be made into ninjutsu bullets, after all, this is just a small research he did on a whim before. After hitting the target, the ninjutsu in the bullet will be automatically released, you can experience it. Under Rog's signal, Aitsue threw the Rasengan bullet that was too small for him. The Rasengan bullet hit an iron pillar more than 10 meters away. At the moment when the bullet burst, a light blue Rasengan appeared at the position where the bullet hit, madly twisting and hitting the huge iron pillar. Chapter 213. Boom! The iron pillar, which was as thick as Rog's body, showed a terrible curve under the constant impact of Rasengan, and then collapsed. Interesting. Looking at the remaining 2 ninjutsu bullets in his hand, Dwarf King Aitsue showed a curious look. Whether it was the chakra that Rog just said or the ninjutsu bullets, they were all things that he had never seen before. After a few seconds of silence, Aitsue threw the Grand Fire Annihilation bullet and Chidori bullet to the left and right sides respectively. The sea of fire and lightning appeared at the same time. On one side was the damage caused by the amazing high temperature, and on the other side was the single damage caused by the terrifying electric current. When the flames and lightning dissipated, Dwarf King Aitsue said again, I can help you build the revolver you want. If you have any other requests, you may as well say them all together. If possible, I hope you can enchant the revolver so that it can respond to the master's call like Thor's hammer. Rog will not use this revolver as his main weapon, so he does not have many requirements for the revolver's enchantment effect. No problem. Although enchantment of weapons will increase the difficulty of manufacturing, it is not difficult for Dwarf King Aitsue. After getting an affirmative reply from Aitsue, Rog finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although he gave enough reward, but for an existence like Aitsue, the materials he gave may not be able to move Aitsue. As the Dwarf King, Aitsue has seen all kinds of scenes. Not to mention vibranium and URU metal, he has seen a lot of other rarer and more precious metals. What really moved him was not the materials given by Rog, but the ninjutsu bullets. This kind of ninjutsu bullet, which has never appeared before, is a good new weapon idea for Aitsue. After Rog and Aitsue reached a cooperation, Thor left Nidavel and returned to Asgard alone. As for Rog, he was left by Aitsue to participate in the manufacturing of armor and revolver. Rog had no opinion about Aitsue's arrangement, and he was even a little happy and excited. Nidavel, this was an existence with an extremely high reputation in the entire universe. As long as it was a weapon or equipment from Nidavel, it could be sold for an unimaginably high price on any planet. The products of the dwarves must be the best. However, what Rog didn't expect was that he would stay in Nidaville for more than 3 months. In the past 3 months, AI Chui had been repeating the process of forging pistols, melting them, forging them again, and melting them again. In AI Chui's own words, the pistol was still lacking. In order to cooperate with AI Chui's OCD, Rog also constantly developed various types of ninjutsu bullets and provided them to AI Chui for a series of tests. After AI Chui broke the mold for the nth time, Rog finally got the revolver that he wanted. This revolver, named Calamity by Atri, was a little bigger than an ordinary revolver and was silver-white in color. The whole gun was about 30 centimeters long and had a capacity of 6 bullets. The 2 barrels arranged side by side can fire 2 bullets at a time. There were 3 firing modes. The first was ordinary shooting, which directly extracted chakra as bullets. It didn't need to be loaded. The power was average, and the firing speed was fast. The second was ninjutsu shooting. As the name suggests, it fired the ninjutsu bullets in the magazine to kill the enemy with ninjutsu effect. The third was fatal shooting. It was similar to ordinary shooting, but it required more chakra. The chakra bullets fired were more powerful. For enemies who didn't specialize in defense, it could be fatal. URU metal could be perfectly fused with chakra, and vibranium also made the pistols super strong. The enchantment effect responded to the summon, allowing him to summon the Calamity at any time. After a few test shots, Rog became more and more satisfied with the Calamity pistol. It was worthy of being a weapon made by Dwarf King Atri. It was perfect. After putting on the armor that Atri had already made, and hanging the Kusanagi sword and Calamity on the left and right sides of his belt, Rog left Nidawyler, where he had lived for more than 3 months, and returned to Asgard through Bifrost. Because of his participation in Thor's escape plan, Heimdall was relieved of his position as the guardian of Bifrost by Odin. It wasn't until a month ago that Heimdall regained his original position and became Asgard's first line of defense. "Do you want to return to Earth directly now?" Heimdall, who was standing on the console, asked. "I'll go back later. I'll say hello to Thor first." After saying goodbye to Heimdall, Rog directly used ninjutsu and flew in the direction of Golden Palace. Earth release, super light heavy rock technique. In more than 3 months in Nidawyler, in addition to cooperating with Atri to create Calamity, Rog did most of the research and development of ninjutsu bullets in exchange for new ninjutsu. Thor's commission provided him with up to 250 ninja coins as commission reward, plus the 335 ninja coins he originally had. The number of his unconsumed ninja coins reached an amazing 585 ninja coins. However, this amazing number didn't last long, and more than half of it was consumed by him. Super light heavy rock technique was one of the ninjutsu he exchanged during the development of ninjutsu bullets. In addition to this ninjutsu that can greatly reduce the mass of matter and has allowed him to fly, he also exchanged more than a dozen ninjutsu including Fire Release, Great Fireball, Fire Release, Fire Dragon Bullet, Water Release, Water Shockwave, Water Release, Water Dragon Bullet, Water Release, Whirlpool Water Blade, Wind Release, Vacuum Ripple, Wind Release, Tornado Hurricane, and so on. This series of ninjutsu exchanges also reduced his unconsumed ninja coins directly to 255. Although the consumption of ninja coins was a bit high, the harvest was obvious. After further improving his ninjutsu list, he always had the intention to find an enemy to practice his ninjutsu. However, this wish of his could only be realized after he returned to Earth. After using super light heavy rock technique to quickly fly to Golden Palace, Rog found Thor, who he hadn't seen for more than 3 months. When Rog saw Thor again, Thor was dealing with piles of documents that were tens of centimeters high in the council hall in Golden Palace. Jane only stayed in Asgard for less than a week before returning to Earth. Thor planned to go to Earth with Jane, but Odin gave him a new task, a long and boring task. Odin no longer dealt with the specific government affairs of Asgard at this time. Everything was handed over to Thor. "I'm going back to Earth. If you need any help in the future, you can contact me through shadow clone technique." After that, Rog took out a shadow clone technique scroll and handed it to Thor. After you go back, help take care of Jane. Her research may attract some malicious eyes. No problem. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.